It is Wednesday night, East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Come on in, gather around. Appreciate those of you that are already here, those of you that were on time for class, those of you that were early. I'm only about 5 minutes late. I don't feel tardy, but it's the way it usually is. But I've got things ready to go. Going to have a good show today. You guys are going to be the stars tonight, talking about Michigan State football. It is Wednesday night, inside of 48 hours as we broadcast this. Inside of 48 hours, you guys are getting ready to stripe the stadium Friday night. Michigan State against the Western Michigan University Broncos, coming in from the Mid-America Conference. Credible opponent. Maybe not as good as they were last year. They were good at times last year. We'll see what they have for the Spartans on Friday. We'll be talking about that, talking about Michigan State. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. SpartanMag.com is your source for Michigan State sports, Michigan State football, Michigan State basketball, recruiting, analysis, coverage of preseason camp, coverage of recruiting, coverage of basketball, and, of course, the home of the Underground Bunker message board, which is the daily narrative on Michigan State sports. It is the church of what's happening now for Michigan State sports and Michigan State football, and what is happening right now pertaining to Michigan State football is opening night coming up Friday night. Michigan State and the Broncos going to be squaring off. I asked Michigan State fans over at the Underground Bunker message board, Spartan Maggers, SpartanMag.com subscribers, to throw some questions at us. I will be fielding those as we go. If you want to call in, you can join the fun that way also. Most of you guys are a little bit shy. You don't like to call in and join the fun, join the show. But if you feel so inclined to go ahead, maybe we'll get a caller or two. Either way, we'll be hitting that message board. The message board mailbag, going to be hitting that hard. In the meantime, give us a thumbs up right here. That helps a lot with algorithms, helps Michigan State fans that are searching YouTube to find our program and to find SpartanMag.com. And that helps us as a news organization as we continue to grow. And as we grow, we can do a better job of giving you content and coverage of your Michigan State Spartans. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. It's very important. We are on the cusp of 6,000 subscribers here on the channel. It was about 2 years ago when we launched it, and I put a call to action out over at SpartanMag.com, wanting to get over 1,000 subscribers, because that opened up some things for us in terms of YouTube and things we could do with YouTube with the algorithms. And thank you to you that you put us over 1,000 fairly quickly. We've been stair-stepping up in terms of the circulation here on this channel, and I think we might hit 6,000 and get over 6,000 tonight. So thank you, those of you that have subscribed. Now, on Sunday, I said, hey, we're going to start doing these, and instead of doing 15 questions and being on here for 2.5 hours, I'm going to go for 3 and out, 3 questions and out, keep these things to about 20, 25 minutes. That was the plan on Sunday. Some things happened. And then there's press conference Monday, press conference Tuesday. Had some, nothing serious, but had some family stuff I had to take care of, errands and so forth. Next thing I know, it's Wednesday, and it's a short week this week with a game on Friday instead of Saturday. We got to get this Spartan Mag Live kicked off and out there. And a little bit late, so I'm going to go another 2 hours tonight probably. I'll go over these questions fairly quickly. Feel free to put questions and comments over in the comments area as well. And this will be the usual 2-hour thing. Can't help it. That's the way we are. But I'd like to get to that 3 and out. 3 questions, boom, out. Give you guys more time to do your daily stuff as well instead of being locked in here. But I know some of you fools, some of you guys, fool, I use that as a good word. I use that lovingly. Some of you fanatics, you don't mind getting chained in here for 2.5 hours talking Michigan State football. That's what we're here for. Question number 1, Gator out of Northville, Michigan says, I think they're going to use Jacoby Winmon as a defensive end linebacker tweener and use Darius Snow as a defensive back linebacker tweener so they can have those 2 guys on the field to cover any offense that's thrown at them in any situation or disguise a lot of looks. He went on in the question to say, do I know of any other tweeners that might be at Michigan State's disposal? You're right about Winmon. You know, he when he transferred in from UNLV, you know, he's a guy that played defensive end as a sophomore, was all conference in the Mountain West. I think second team, third team, all conference as a defensive end as a sophomore. Last year as a junior, played linebacker. Now he's back up to 250 pounds, which is a lot of weight for a linebacker. And we saw him in the video last week. He was playing some defensive end. asked Marco Coleman, the defensive line coach, about how they're going to handle that with him being a linebacker defensive end, and he kind of said, well, they're working on it, but he did not deny that he's playing defensive end. We saw it in practice. Anyway, it looks to me like he is playing full-fledged defensive end, probably a stand-up defensive end. Jeff Pietrowski was solely a stand-up defensive end in the spring scrimmage, and I suspect he will spend the entire year as a stand-up defensive end. I mentioned before that when Scotty Hazelton was at Kansas State, they deployed or employed a stand-up defensive end in a 4-3. 3 down linemen and one was standing up. You might look at it and say that looks like a 3-3 or a 3-4. Well, it's a 4-man front with one standing up. The way they handle they didn't have anyone like in a middle guard, nose tackle, zero shade, Okie defense 3-4, nothing like that. It was a 4-man front with one of them standing up. I think Pietrowski's going to do that, and I suspect Winmon might be backing him up. I don't know that from any inside information. That's just me reading between some lines and going off some clues. And Winmon is a guy that's slippery as a pass rusher. Is he tough and rotund enough to take on the run right at him? Honestly, I did not go back and look at his film as a sophomore at UNLV to see how he did at point of attack taking on the run, so I don't know. Probably should have done that in the last week or so when it kind of became, I don't want to say clear, but the hints became more frequent that he'd be playing defensive end. I'd like to go back and take a look at it. Here on this show last year, when Michigan State got Drew Jordan out of Duke, a lot of people are like, hey, we got our pass rusher. We got anytime that there's a new player come to Michigan State, there's a lot of people banging pots and pans like, this is it. We got the greatest player in the world. He's coming in from where? Duke? Duke, yeah, he's great. He's a great player. He's gonna make all the difference. I don't really go for that type of hyperbole. I'm more like, okay, settle down, have some dip. Let's look at the film, see what it looks like. I looked at Drew Jordan. I watched him against North Carolina, and he was getting pushed off the ball. And I said that here on SpartanMag Live, 15 months ago, 16 months ago. I said he's a guy that kind of lost his starting job. Good guy, he's solid. He's a man. He's a guy. He's a guy. But pass rusher extraordinaire, no. And I was concerned about his ability to withstand a double team in the run game. As it turned out, he was pretty solid in the run game, solid enough, and he was a good contributor, second stringer, not a guy that saved the world, but he's a guy that gave them another body that helped Michigan State. He was one of many pieces that helped them go 11-2, finish number 8 in the country in the coaches poll, and of course win a New Year's Six bowl game in Atlanta, the Chick-fil-A Bowl. So Drew Jordan was a solid piece, but don't make him out to be Alan Page or something like that, right? So Jacoby Windman, I would have liked to have gone back and watched him against the run at UNLV a couple of years ago. I don't have that information. I'm not just going to throw something out there and say, hey, he was all conference. He must be great. Well, I do think that he is an interesting athlete, and he's slippery quick. He's not easy to block. I think he will have an impact in the pass rush. Could he be a guy that plays some linebacker as well as defensive end? I don't know. At 250, that might be hard to do. But so I don't know if he's a tweener or a full-fledged stand-up defensive end right now. It's going to be, we'll begin to find out on Friday night when you guys strike the stadium. Darius Snow, I was talking to him after practice at the press conferences this week. I asked him, when he's out there with Cal Halliday, who's the middle linebacker and who's the will linebacker? And he said they could both do it, and they can both make the calls as a Mike linebacker. It depends on, where they are when the ball's snapped and where the ball is according to the hash. And, if you're playing a hurry up, either one of them can take that over. But it was insightful that Darius Snow, who is one of the more intelligent guys on the team in terms of academics and also football smarts, according to his teammates, he's able to play some Mike linebacker and make some calls. He didn't play linebacker last year. He was a nickel and a little bit of safety. This year, he's added like 12, 14 pounds. He's up to like 234, something like that. He's linebacker size, and all indications are he's hitting really nicely during preseason camp. And he was on the Mel Tucker show tonight. He was at interviews this week. I think he's the only player that they brought out for interviews twice in preseason camp. And so things looking up for Darius Snow. So Darius Snow, I think, is a full-fledged linebacker, both inside linebacker positions. He can go and play the nickel. And that's going to be really interesting to see when they play a tough run-oriented team like Wisconsin and Minnesota and Michigan. Will they go heavier with someone like Snow at nickel? He played nickel last year. Can he do that and remain a nickel with those extra 10, 12 pounds? we've got a question later on asking me to predict the starting lineup. Chester Kimbrough played nickel in the scrimmage. He's done it in the past. I think Kimbrough might be most likely to start this game in the nickel position in the slot area against pass-oriented teams. And Western will look to run against it, I would imagine, because Western likes to be balanced. They were prolific in the run game last year. They had the one kid that was over 1,000 yards. Sean Tyler, 5'8", 1,140 yards last year, 9 touchdowns, 5'8", 185 out of Richton Park, Illinois. And then, of course, former Spartan Darius Jefferson, 6'1", 238. Last year, 836 yards, 10 touchdowns. So those two tailbacks combined for 19 rushing touchdowns last year. That's a pretty good figure. I know it's against MAC competition for the most part, but those running backs are legit. Ladarius Jefferson at Michigan State as a freshman rushed for 255 yards. That was in 2018, the year Michigan State went to the Red Box Bowl. He averaged like 3.5 yards a carry that year. Then as a sophomore, the year Michigan State went to the Pinstripe Bowl, 19 carries, 25 yards. His productivity suffered a little bit. Coaching change, he got in the portal, went to Western. It's been a good fit for him. Led Western in rushing during the COVID-shortened 2020 season. And then last year, he was the number 2 back, and he was solid. You know that Ladarius Jefferson is going to be fired up against his former team. So I say that Michigan State's likely to start Kimbrough, but at the nickel position, or maybe Michigan State can play the run satisfactorily with more of a light lineup like that, but Michigan State can always change and go to a heavier nickel. Does that mean Darius Snow again this year with the extra weight? He did it last year. I think that's possible also. But Gator from Northville was asking about any other tweener types that can help them disguise looks. I think Ben Van Sumeren, senior transfer from the University of Michigan, inside linebacker. Not the quickest guy in getting into pass drops for coverage, but he is strong. He's lost a little bit of weight. And he was getting a lot of compliments early in camp. And if you watched him in the spring scrimmage, he stood up on the edge and did some pass rushing as a linebacker also. So, he's not maybe a tweener that can go out there and cover the pass, but I think he can do some things as a stand-up edge guy. Tank Brown was a guy that came in as a linebacker, and they tried to morph him into a defensive end. They thought he might be able to do a little bit of both. And now he's full-fledged defensive end. It seems like he's been having a little bit of trouble getting on the field and making an impact in practice. Maybe he'll get some traction going later in the year. But right now, Tank Brown, he got into the field a little bit last year. I haven't heard anything, but I just haven't seen him out there, in the films that they put out. Haven't seen a lot of him, so I don't know if he's ready to do a lot of damage right now, but down the road, even in this year, well, he could be an edge guy also, but I think his linebacking days sound like they're over. Now, Angelo Gross is a guy that's had the capacity to play nickel. Did it 2 years ago, played safety last year, playing safety this year, and these guys have been saying all offseason that Gross is a key player in order for this defense and the pass defense to get back in the human race and then become what I think can be potentially a good pass defense. What is a good pass defense? A good pass defense is a team that ranks in the top 5 in the Big Ten in yards allowed per pass attempt. I mean, you can stop the run all day and give up 330 yards to the pass, and everybody's pulling their hair out. What the hell? They gave up 330 yards. But you look at the scoreboard, you only give up 18 points, and you look at yards per pass attempt like against Miami last year. Sometimes that stat can look good, even if you're giving up more than 300 yards. So keep an eye on the yards per pass attempt in relation to other teams in the Big Ten. Gross is key for that. Question number 2, MSU analyst from Atlanta. He says, Are your expectations for the defensive line higher than previously thought with the additional media and information coming out on the positive developments at defensive tackle with Derek Harmon and Maverick Hansen as backups, 2 starters, Jacob Slade and Simeon Barrow, and the defensive end development with Brandon Wright emerging as a bigger player, becoming more known? So he's asking me if I'm thinking more of the defensive line based on those developments. Good question. No, my thoughts haven't changed a whole lot. I'm not surprised that Harmon and Hansen are getting a lot of positive accolades as backups. Interesting that Marco Coleman last week said that those 2 are pushing Slade and Barrow for time. Slade and Barrow are going to be an excellent defensive tackle tag team, one of the best in the Big Ten, maybe one of the best in the country. And he's telling those guys, Coleman's telling those guys, hey, Harmon and Hansen are breathing down your neck for playing time. Not surprised that Harmon's made that step. It's good if you're a Harmon fan and a Michigan State fan to have that affirmation looking at him and how he's changed his body. Last year he played a little bit as a true freshman, came in at 350. Go over to SpartanMag.com. We got a story on Derek Harmon. It's a free story. Go check it out. And he talks a little bit about it. Also, we have some video of him here on the YouTube channel. Very engaging, entertaining character. Go watch the video. You'll like it. Anyway, Harmon was a big, tough, rotund guy. Came in at 350 pounds, got down to 325 for last season, took some more weight off. Now he's 305. But he's a strong, he's lost some of that baby fat, lost weight, but he's added strength. So he was solid last year, good in that green-white game, good in that spring scrimmage. And I think he's ready to be a plus backup. So on one hand, I'm not surprised, but it is positive to see that affirmation that he's coming along. And Maverick Hansen, a strong guy, he continues to get a lot of compliments. Meanwhile, guys that have played before, like Deshaun Mallory and Jalen Hunt, are third string, and it's competitive, and it's hard to get on the field there for those guys. And Mallory last year was a guy we thought was going to be playing a lot, lost a lot of weight, lost some strength along with it. Jalen Hunt, like I've said, has flashed excellent ability at times, but just had trouble keeping the rubber on the road a little bit. So, no, I expect the defensive tackle to be very, very good. Maybe it's a tad better with those backups. Continue to get those compliments. At defensive end, that's been one of the big questions during the offseason. Pietrowski is a starter now. What's he going to look like? Our friend Big Mooby is a big believer in Pietrowski. And we'll see what he does now. Pietrowski now is going into it having worked with new defensive line coach and with Brandon Jordan, the new pass rush coach. Maybe Pietrowski can ramp it up a little bit. Maybe he can continue to improve as his career goes along, like a lot of defensive ends at Michigan State have done over the years. So Pietrowski, functional, new starter. Chris Bogle coming in from Florida was kind of a contributor there. He's a veteran in the scrimmage, wiry, strong. He's got some long arm strength to him. I'm kind of expecting Chris Bogle to start. He's one of the bigger X factors of the season. If he's just okay, then that's troublesome a little bit for the defensive line. If he's better than okay, that takes the whole shooting match up a notch, to use a Nick Saban phrase. Brandon Wright, former running back, that is encouraging also. Made some noise at the end of the season last year. Did some good things in the scrimmage. Gets a lot of compliments from his coaches. Maybe he is ready to be an every down defensive end. He's improving at a high clip. To answer your question, and also Jacoby Windman moving in there helps a little bit. The defensive end picture, Pietrowski, Brandon Wright looking a little better. Bogle not hearing a whole lot. No news isn't necessarily bad news. And Windman moving in there, is that a good thing or not? Probably a good thing. At 250, I suspect they've been planning that for more than a couple of months. So still a big X factor. I'm not ready to say I love the defensive line yet, but I think Western Michigan's offensive line, based on what the coach said last week, he says he likes the way that unit's looking, but don't know what to make of that. I'd love to have seen Western Michigan on film last week to give you an idea of what Michigan State's defensive line is going to be going up against. But hey, it's a season opener. There's a lot of variables, a lot of unknowns. But that defensive end picture is going to be very interesting on Monday, that's for sure. All right, let's get over here and see. Let's do a little roll call here, see who we got. We've got first man in was Mark, the best of what's still around. He's happy to be number one. He's on the poll. Joe Marsh says, good evening. Spartan MD says, go green. Nolan Schroeder says, go green. And Nick Harrington, Jim Comp, how are you doing? So got an interesting starting lineup today because we have the Flash Spartan Mag Live. We weren't promoting this all day on SpartanMag.com as we've done in the past. I just kind of mentioned about 30 minutes before we went on the air, hey, we're going on the air. And it's good to have a lot of you Spartan Maggers showing up. So got make the best of what's still around. He wants to play the one. He's the point. We'll put the ball in his hands. He's running the point. Got Joe Marsh, the 2 guard. Spartan MD, he's the doctor. He's the 3. Nolan Schroeder, big man in the middle. Nick Harrington, stretch 4, 3-point range as a power forward. That's our starting lineup. Eric M says go green. Nolan Schroeder from Holland, Michigan. Out there in West Michigan. Things are beautiful out there today. Late August, early September, the best weather of the year in the state of Michigan, in my opinion. I know it's not so warm and hot for all you guys up there in Torch Lake as the crowd and the boys of summer start moving away from Torch Lake and those colder waters up north. When it gets into September, it's not really great beach time anymore. But I love it when it's about 77 degrees and sunny and just September, Michigan, it's great weather. Great weather. Spartan MD says, wondering if JC can stick to the new format. Yeah. I mentioned earlier we were planning on going 3 and out. This is not going to be a 3 and out. We will debut a 3 and out at some point. We got kickoff coming on Friday. Don't anticipate that. Maybe on Sunday. Who knows? Maybe on Sunday. Who knows? Larry Frank says, Jim, go sporty. Okay. Will Starworth says, can't wait for Friday. Go green. Joe Marsh has agreed. Pumped up for Friday. A lot of y'all ready for Friday. JC1829 checking in from Washington, D.C. Dog Kenneth says, this is my favorite part of the show, the pre-show. He posted that back when I was doing the clock, those of you that were late. Old Tuck from Austin, Texas, the Bell Cow. Time to trade some paint. We got a question in the mailbag today from someone else from Austin. We got a lot of Spartan Maggers in Austin, and they make themselves heard. We like those people. Gordon Sonona says, do you think Coach Mel Tucker would be interested in recruiting any of Nebraska commitments? I think there's going to be a coaching change. I've not looked at that. Our own Matt Dorsey used to be really good at forecasting some of that, like who can shake loose when there's hot seat situations. I've not looked, but we'll have to keep our eye on that. So the Mel Tucker show was tonight, first one of the year, and he had Darius Snow on. And he complimented Darius Snow a lot, says he just hits and goes hard in practice. And Jaden Reed is the other guy that they really complimented in practice. Xavier Henderson, the fifth-year senior safety, he said he's been lights out in camp. I thought that was an intriguing quote from Mel Tucker tonight during his radio show. A lot of times Mel Tucker keeps things a little bit close to the vest, and that was the case mostly tonight. But when talking about some of those guys, he was there were some strong statements. Got nothing, he was not asked by host George Blaha, who's a great person and a great broadcaster. Was not really asked, like, who's going to be the kicker, who's going to be the running back. He doesn't want to get into that, so they didn't get into that. Didn't even come up. Rob South says, what's up, fellas? Chris Martinez says, I hope Jim is getting some sleep the last few days. Sleep, a little bit. Trying to get more sleep than I did back when I was in my 20s and 30s. A lot of all-nighters back then. I thought I was tough, thought it was a good idea, but I think it hurt my brain, quite honestly. I think I lost some gigabytes doing that. People always say, if you could tell yourself at a young age, if you could have any advice to yourself when you're 25 years old, my advice to myself back then would have been get more sleep. Because I thought I was like getting a lot of work done. I was getting a lot of work done. But I think it hurt me up here a little bit. I'm not going to kid you. But seriously, my memory's not as good as it used to be. I used to have scary memory. I used to scare people with my recall abilities, but not so much anymore. But some of those days I had to stay up all night. A lot of all-nighters back when we were doing Spartan Magazine. That thing had to go out. We were doing 12 issues a year, and it was like having finals week once a month. It's like 12. It's like finals week 12 times a year. And we had fun with that. It was rewarding. We gathered a lot of Michigan State fans and subscribers, forwarded the brand as a news organization, and that later paved the way to SpartanMag.com. We closed down the print publication, back in about 2016 and decided to focus on the website, and that's what we're doing right now. Got momentum going, and we're excited about it. We want you to be a part of it. Go to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber over there. A lot of free content over there at SpartanMag.com, too. But the Underground Bunker Message Board, you need to be a paying subscriber to get in there for Michigan State talk all day, every day. Gary Primo, 1975 grad, says, go green. Nice goggles, Gary. Spartan MD says, Jim just posted on the message board inviting other maggers. Larry Franks checking in from Florida. Spartan MD encouraging people to like and follow. We appreciate all that. Oh, we had an audio loop earlier. Sorry about that. Had to turn that off. Old Tuck from Ludington High School says, is Winmon a Bradshaw Littlejohn type of guy? Anyone remember Bradshaw Littlejohn? He was from Gaffney, South Carolina. Had some ability, Bobby Williams era. Came in, had some compliments as a true freshman, and then didn't quite get on the field. Then he transferred out. I can't remember where he transferred to, Howard or something like that. He was a big guy that was a quarterback in high school. They tried to make him a linebacker. Didn't quite work out. Let's go to question number 3. Sparty Teacher from Washington, D.C. He says, question, should we be concerned about stopping the outside running game, given our smallish defensive ends relative to our 2 rugged starters last season? Great question, great point. And that's something I'll be watching, and that's something I think Western Michigan's going to test a little bit. And if they have a little bit of success, then you can anticipate Washington and Akron trying it as well. Michigan State needs to show that they can play the point of attack with toughness, sturdiness, whether it be Pietrowski or Bogle or Winmon if he's in there. But I think spilling it and scraping over the top, gang tackling, speed, that type of thing, more so than maybe the traditional, they're going to be, the usual stuff, setting the edge and all those things. Are they able to do that, or will they get blown off the ball? Michigan State, I'm sure, you can guarantee they've tested that by themselves in practice to see if they can handle it. How have they been doing? That's the type of thing that they wouldn't tell us even if we asked, so you don't even bother asking. You'll find out when I find out, because Panashuk's not there anymore, Beasley's gone. Those guys are okay. So Bogle, I think Chris Bogle, the transfer from Florida, can do it. I watched him closely in the scrimmage to see what he looked like. Can he do it for 60 plays in a game, 65 plays? We saw him do it. He can do it for 10 or 15. Can he do it down after down after down? They've got backups. Other people will come in. But you'll find out when I find out, Sparty Teacher. All right, Doc from Las Vegas. What do you got, Doc? He says, Coach B.T. Jordan in his camps also taught offensive line technique, not just defensive line pass rush moves. Did Coach Jordan do anything with our offensive line during the offseason or early in camp as well, or did he just focus on defensive line? It's my understanding he just focused on pass rush. Defensive linemen, defensive tackles, linebackers, safeties, corners, everybody getting off blocks, pass rushing. I didn't know that about offensive line teaching, so very perceptive on your behalf. I wasn't aware that he also did some teaching for offensive linemen. But that's something to keep an eye on in the future as he gets entrenched at Michigan State and continues to have an impact. Question number 5, Joe in Livonia says, the fact that not much has been said about the running backs is concerning. The focus on offense seems to be on the offensive line, quarterbacks, and wide receivers in terms of the conversations. The question for you is, are they keeping this quiet on purpose to not tip their hand, or is this going to be a problem area? Have you seen any flashes by our top running backs? If we can't have a functional run game and we are one-dimensional, it could be a problem. I agree with all of that, Joe in Livonia. I agree with all of that. The parts of practice that we've seen, speaking of which, I had something ready to go. I think this might be it right here. Yeah, I showed this a little bit last week. Let me turn the volume down. Mel Tucker doing some coaching here. It's Ronald Williams, number 9. That's 21. That's Dylan Tatum is 21, moving to corner. 22 is Davion Prim. 37 is Coley, the true freshman. All right, let the audio go on that a little bit, just because I become intrigued with it when I start watching it again. But Mel Tucker, when at the beginning of practice, when they do individuals, Tucker's with the corners and he's coaching them hard, as you can see. Reminds me a little bit when Nick Saban coached the corners when he first took over, 95, 96, 97. Tucker's even a little more. I mean, Saban was fast-paced, challenging, confrontational. Tucker's is different, a little bit different, but as you can see, old school, demanding. And similar, he learned he learned while watching Saban at three different programs. Anyway, what was the question about? It was about running backs. The practice that we're able to watch as media are things like this: individual workouts, individual drills. We don't get a chance to watch a lot of blocking versus getting off blocks. And certainly we don't get to watch much running backs. And running backs, they get a little bit of live action with scrimmaging in practice, and a little bit in terms of during the actual scrimmages, which we are not able to see in the media. We're able to watch them in drills like this, the running backs. So the things I've seen from the running backs, Jarek Broussard, Jalen Berger, even Elijah Collins, Jordan Simmons, the things I've seen are not going to be very revealing in terms of their ability or inability. We can see that Jarek Broussard is very well put together. It's looking good in that area. I'm not hearing anything bad about those guys. You're asking because we've not heard a lot about running backs. Is that a problem? Well, I mean, the running backs came out and did some interviews at the very beginning of practice. Ephraim Reed, the new running backs coach, he came out and spoke also. But we asked Mel Tucker a couple of times how that competition is going. And he says, we'll find out when we get to the game. He doesn't want to reveal anything. He doesn't want to tell anyone who the starters are going to be. I guess I can understand that. They don't want to give opponents anything. So Jalen Berger, I think, was number one at the outset of camp and into the first scrimmage. I've not heard anything in the last week and a half, 2 weeks in terms of any changes there. So going by early in August, I assume it's still like that. Would not shock me if Broussard jumps ahead of him. I'm thinking it might be those two. I will say this: when I went back and watched the Peach Bowl, Jordan Simmons had moved ahead of Eli Collins to become the number 2 running back, actually the starting running back for the Peach Bowl, whereas Collins was ahead of him in the Penn State game. I talked to former running backs coach William Piegler as to why that was the case, and he said, well, Jordan Simmons was a little bit banged up late in the year. That's one of the reasons Elijah leapfrogged him. I thought that maybe Elijah had just overtaken him. Then when they got to the bowl game, it was Simmons ahead of Collins again. Now they've got a new running backs coach, so that gets all shuffled up again a little bit. But when I watched that Pittsburgh game, Michigan State had trouble running the ball, of course. But Simmons had a couple of carries that I thought were pretty feisty. A little bit, just like gains of 4 and 5 yards, just a couple of them. Michigan State did not run the ball that well that day. Pittsburgh, very good run defense. But Simmons was, I don't know, a little bit better than I kind of remembered, even if it was just a couple of carries. But still, I think it's Broussard and Berger. And, they want to keep things quiet. But we just need to understand it's not going to be as good as last year. Even if the offensive line becomes great and these running backs are good, there's no Kenneth Walker on the roster. So I don't know what you're expecting, but it's not going to be as good and explosive as it was last year. Can it be good to functional? It needs to be, to your point, in order to make the pass game and everything else go. Question number 6, Ridge72 from Parts Unknown. He says, what kind of year does Peyton Thorne need to have in order to not be back next year and get drafted? Question mark. What kind of year does Peyton need? I think they need to win double digits again and more touchdowns from him, fewer interceptions. And one of the keys there is, I might touch on this on one of the other questions. We're hearing from offensive coordinator Jay Johnson that the game is slowing down for Peyton Thorne now. So in terms of moving the chains, I think he could become more proficient in that area. Just plugging it in where it needs to go in the various windows. If he has time to throw, which I suspect should be the case. But he needs to have the run game. He's going to have more in terms of targets from the tight end position. I know Hayward was pretty good last year, developed as such. This year, the hope is that they'll have a run-blocking tight end to keep the defenses honest, and then can crack and go or play action off of that to keep the defense off balance and utilize the tight end, even though they may not have an NFL tight end like a Connor Hayward. But if they're better blockers, which Connor Hayward was still not all that proficient as a blocker last year because it was new to him. He's functional. But you have Thorne with a little bit more diversified weaponry and another year of experience and the game slowing down for him, plugging it in around. If all that happens, I think that and then they win games, maybe he could get in that conversation of possibly going pro. But I don't think that's on his list of things he wants to do. He's the son of a coach, and he's taking ownership of this program. And every quarterback would love to be a highly ranked, draftable quarterback. I've not seen him described in that way at this point. I'm not sure how his arm strength compares to others. I'm not sure how his hand size compares to others. You know, it gets a lot of publicity that there's a certain hand size beneath which great college quarterbacks, there's a Mendoza line. If your hand is thus small or whatever the measurements are from pinky to thumb, the bust rate goes up substantially, which was a little bit of a red flag for Kenny Pickett at Pittsburgh. His hands apparently are small, but he's had a good preseason. And Kenny Pickett, when Michigan State was getting ready to play in that bowl game, I was watching Pittsburgh film, and everybody knows that Pickett was good. But, man, he was really good. He was a very, very, very good college quarterback. And I'm going to be intrigued to see whether the hand size proves to be an issue for him in the NFL. Doesn't seem to be yet. But he was a guy that I don't know. I mean, when I was watching Pittsburgh before the Peach Bowl last year, I'm like, that's a guy the Lions need to look at taking seriously early in the first round. Type of guy that you could end up kicking yourself if you don't draft that guy. Then the hand measurement thing came out. And I'm not one to buck trends a whole lot. I mean, the NFL football is a little bit bigger, and it's a thing. So I don't know. But I don't know where Peyton Thorne is in those things, those measurables. I'm sure he knows where he stands in those things. You know, I think Brian Lewerke might have been hoping to be like a junior and go NFL type of guy. And I know some people that have the theory that maybe that clouded his focus a little bit later in his career. He didn't have much of a run game, and there was injuries on the offensive line and all kinds of problems with the offense. You know what happened there. And he was very good as a sophomore. I mean, Brian Lewerke was better as a sophomore at Michigan State than Kirk Cousins was. But then he kind of flatlined from there. Good guy, though, good kid. I think he's still trying to bounce around. He was trying to bounce around in camp this year, I think. I'm not sure what he's doing now, but I wish him the best. And, you know, you see quarterbacks around the Big Ten. For instance, David Blau, I think, was just released by the Lions, but he was a backup for Detroit for the last 2 years. He was a quarterback for Purdue. You know, when Michigan State beat Purdue, was it 2019? David Blau was not the best quarterback on the field that day. You know, Brian Lewerke was. But Blau stuck in the NFL. I was surprised. When I watched him, I wouldn't have thought NFL guy. Now, the guy at Purdue right now, O'Connell, when they beat Iowa, after that, man, on Sunday, I ran right to the DVR and I had to watch their game against Iowa. How did this guy I've never heard of, and Purdue put up 350-plus yards against that Iowa defense, which was outstanding. Outstanding in some ways, but Brom is so good with his play calling and strategies and game planning, and this guy O'Connell was just accurate, enough zip, and just processing. He just process, boom, check, boom, check one, check, boom, boom, on time. Had a couple playmakers. And I posted on the Underground Bunker message board, I go, this O'Connell guy that was a walk-on, nobody knows who he is, but I'm not pretending to be Gil Brandt, but that guy looks like an NFL quarterback to me. That was last year in September, and no one had ever heard of him. I've gotten a lot wrong over the years, but now O'Connell's being looked at as an NFL prospect. David Blau, I didn't see it. Nate Sudfeld, the Detroit Lions just picked up Nate Sudfeld. He was in Indiana a couple years ago. I think when Wilson was the coach, somewhat prolific. I think he was a junior college transfer. Had some ability, but did I think he was an NFL quarterback? It didn't strike me as such. So if Blau and Sudfeld can be NFL quarterbacks, why can't Thorne? I mean, Hoyer did have a strong arm. When he threw from, the left hash to the far sideline, he did have a pretty good hose. But even Hoyer, when he was at Michigan State, there were Michigan State fans that were Brian Hoyer detractors. He was good, solid quarterback. He was good. He's pretty good. Ended up being a long-term NFL backup, multi-millionaire. Good for him. Good guy. But, he was part of that D'Antonio program to get the program going. And as he said, extinguish what was called the same old Spartans moniker back in those days. And he got that done. And for a couple of years, he didn't have the greatest defense working with him. He didn't have the greatest, talent all around him. But he did a really good job. And helped spearhead the D'Antonio era, still in the NFL. Well, he just finished in the NFL, I think. But is Peyton Thorne better than Hoyer? Maybe. I mean, I would think that he will do more as a Michigan State quarterback than Hoyer did. Hoyer's stats were kind of okay. Completion percentage was kind of okay. Went undrafted. Stuck in the NFL. Ended up being a really good football IQ guy and caddy for Tom Brady. You can get a job doing that. And Thorne is such a student of the game and such a team guy. I could see him being a backup based on being a caddy for a starter. And that backup quarterback role in the NFL, it's perfect if you have a quarterback who is not threatened by the backup, but can rely on the backup to give him insight between possessions, what he's seeing on the field, and to help him with game study, help him with game film. Preparing week in and week out with somebody who's on his side and not competing with him. Thorne, I don't want to say at the very least, but Thorne has that written all over him at the next level, at least, because he's such a student of the game, because he's the son of a coach, because he's a team guy, and such a football IQ. I could see him having a Brian Hoyer backup quarterback career in the NFL. I don't want to say at the least, but that's not what you aim for, but he could do that. But like I said, Blau and Sudfeld, Thorne could do that. But I don't think he's like in a hurry to get out. So even if he has like a really great year, I think he could have a very good year, a good year. A lot of that's going to depend on the help he gets from his teammates. But good question, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time thinking about it, I don't think. What do we have here? We got question number 7 from Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina. He says, what is the Comparoni Power Index on Spartan Stadium concession stand items? He says, my top 3 are... Let me rewind this thing. I'll put another one up in a minute. Sparty's top 3 are: number 1, melting moments, ice cream, can't argue with that. Number 2, hot dogs, staple. Number 3, hot chocolate for cold games. I am a big hot chocolate guy. I do love me some hot chocolate. Melting moments and hot dogs. Too much information here, but I can't do that. I'm gluten-free, unfortunately. It's highly inconvenient, but stadium concession stand, fare, not my strength. So, even they up in the press box, they have hot dogs and the same things that you guys have. And I gotta bring my own food. Own food. Kind of sucks. Let's see what we've got here. Let me see if I can find. Here we go. You guys like the practice video? Let's go to this. This is back earlier during camp. Question number 8. Desert Green says, are people underestimating... Let me check over here and make sure I haven't screwed anything up. Everything looks okay. He says, all right, Desert Green, this is along more Peyton Thorne. He says, are people underestimating the Peyton Thorne factor? Meaning the combination of 1, just how much he's improved since last year, 2, how critical an experienced returning star quarterback has on an entire college football team, and 3, are they underestimating Thorne and the number of caliber and the quality caliber of his weaponry? Mosley, Coleman, Reed, Barker, Carr, and Hunt, among others. Good points, good question. They might be underestimating Peyton Thorne. You got a quarterback as a sophomore who helped get a team to 11 wins. He struggled in the bowl game a little bit. He was the first one to criticize himself. But really, he's playing to rave reviews from the coaches right now in camp. It's not camp anymore, but in preseason practice. Rave reviews. They love his leadership, Peyton Thorne. They love his knowledge of the game. And like I said a few minutes ago, the game is slowing down for him. So not only does he have pretty good weaponry in terms of skill around him, the game is slowing down. He's going to know where to plug and play. You got to like his toughness, too. You go back and watch that Penn State game, there was one play where he lowered his head and took a shot. Got up, didn't miss a snap. Mel Tucker says he has an influence on these guys. Teammates listen to him, offense and defense. There was one play in that Penn State game also. It was like was it a 4th down? It was like a 4th and short or maybe a 3rd and short. And the center, I think it was Matt Allen. Might have been Samag. Obviously, he's one of the two. I think it was Samag. I don't know for sure. And it's dangerous for me to, if I don't know for sure, it's dangerous to. Anyways, one of them. The center didn't snap it. They missed the snap count. Called for the snap. Offense moved. Ball didn't come out. And Thorne ripped him a new one. Thorne got on the center and dropped some letter bombs like a leader should. That's something that Thorne would not have done in September. But, the competition to become the quarterback had long since ended. It was Thorne's team, and you could tell he was becoming more and more comfortable to confront and hold people accountable. Player-led team. Thorne to a T. They like him. They listen to him. I don't want to say they fear him, but they straighten up around him. People might be underestimating that part of it. We'll have to see how the offensive line does in the run game. He needs to have the run game to complement everything else. But you're right. Keon Coleman's going to have an impact. They lose Naylor. Naylor made the Vikings today, by the way, or yesterday. Good for him. So they'll miss Naylor's explosiveness. Jaden Reed is obviously very good when those two have a telepathy going back to high school days. Very good third down situations. But, he might have looked at Reed a little bit too much in that Penn State game also with that pick six. So third down, looking him up a little bit too much. Thorne might need to spread it around a little bit more on money downs. And Keon Coleman, Jaden Reed missed a little bit of practice here in preseason camp, and Keon Coleman really stepped it up. Keon Coleman believes in himself. He has great ability. And Thorne to Coleman, that connection is really becoming strong. So that's going to help the whole outfit that he's not relying just on Reed. Reed and Coleman, I think they've got the capacity. Last year, Reed had 1,056 yards receiving, and I think Naylor had over 700. I think there's only one other team, maybe two. Ohio State had three guys close to 1,000 yards. They had at least two, and I think one with 800 yards receiving. If you can have two receivers, 1,000 yards each in the Big Ten, that's rare air. Ohio State had it, and Penn State had it last year with Dotson and I think the Cunningham kid, if my memory's right. Michigan State last year had 1,000 with Reed, and then, Naylor, who missed some time, had 700 or so. If Naylor hadn't gotten hurt, maybe he gets over 1,000 also. Anyway, it depends on how much. You have Mosley there also, a senior that is picking up his leadership, physical guy, possession guy. I say Trey Mosley's a possession guy, but there was that one play against Miami when they threw that little bubble screen, turned the corner, went 70 yards for a touchdown or something. So Mosley has some of that explosiveness, and certainly he's good in the red zone, crossing route, slant, touchdown against Penn State. One was also, I think, a freelance thing. But Mosley's good, so he's going to eat up some of those catches as well. But I think there's a potential there for Reed to have 1,000 yards receiving again, obviously. And I think Coleman has the potential to be a 1,000-yard receiver right now. I know he's a guy who just has 7 catches, and we still need to see it on game day week after week. And he needs to do it against, different types of coverages and obstructions he'll see at the line of scrimmage. For instance, the great Plaxico Burress came to Michigan State with all kinds of ability. You saw it in the NFL for years and years at 6'6" and physical. And he was good. He came in highly ranked, was a Prop 48, and then I think it was 1998, had a good first game. Then his second college game, I think that was the game out at Oregon, the day Campbell broke his neck. Michigan State was blown out, 1998. Ugly game for Michigan State. And Plaxico Burress struggled. And he admitted later in the year, he said he encountered a level of press coverage that he hadn't seen in practice, and he did not do a good job. He didn't know how to counter it. So that's when he knew he needed to get back to school, get back to work, and work on those parts of his game. Now, Michigan State with Ronald Williams and Amir Speed, Michigan State's receivers are seeing all kinds of great press coverage, so it won't be press coverage that bothers him. But from week to week, you'll see different coverages, and you have to make different reads as a receiver to break off your routes and so forth. Keon Coleman has not had to do that at this level. How that works out, we'll be learning that as we go along, too. It remains to be seen. But that being said, I do think Coleman has the capacity to maybe be a 1,000-yard receiver this year. The caveats are dealing with what I just mentioned and Mosley. Mosley can get over 600-700 yards himself. So if Mosley's getting a lot, that'll take some numbers away from others. But I think those two, Reed and Coleman, basically I think they're both NFL receivers eventually. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with DJ Barker, the transfer from Illinois, has 11 or 12 career touchdowns. Had a game-winning touchdown against Michigan State at Spartan Stadium a few years ago when Illinois had that crazy come-from-behind victory when Michigan State was wearing those terrible neon jerseys that they still wear. I don't know, occasionally. But Barker is a effervescent personality, well-rounded, can block, reliable. He's going to be an asset. And you keep hearing that Tyler Hunt, tight end, has taken his game up a level. He's like 12 to 15 pounds heavier. He's an excellent athlete. We talked about him last week. Does he become a guy that can give you more than 15 catches? I don't know. I mean, then, Malik Carr, he's the most talented out of all the tight ends. I think he's missed a little bit of time this preseason, so his impact might come, after a week or two as he gets his feet back on the ground. But to your point, Peyton Thorne, the game is slowing down for him. And that's something that they said years and years and years ago about someone that kind of reminds me of Thorne a little bit. And I hope people don't take this as an insult. But it kind of reminds me of Brian Griese a little bit. Because Griese was just kind of okay. But the more he learned, the better he got. And, hey, going into the 1997 season when Michigan had a great season and Griese was part of that, in 96, coming out of 96, it was a legit discussion, an arguable point going into the 97 season. Who's better, Brian Griese or Todd Schultz? Schultz had some good moments in 96. And then, Schultz kind of flatlined in 97. Had some decent moments and some combustible moments as well. And Griese was part of a very good Michigan team that won a national championship. And Griese ended up becoming a pretty good pro too. But in 96, when both were going into their senior year, Schultz and Griese were about even. But anyway, Thorne, I don't know if, comparable mechanics and all that, I'm not sure. Arm strength, I'm not sure. Someone who knows more about quarterbacking would have to speak to that. Question number 9. I'm not sure who posted this from Parts Unknown, but he says, I've seen red vests on number 2, number 64, number 0, number 12, and several others in practice. Have you been given any indication how healthy the team will be when they take the field? Sounds like somebody wants to place a bet. My answer, I've not heard any of those troubling rumors that sometimes you hear around this time of year. And if I had, I might just have to say, I got a way of winking and without giving specifics, but I've not heard anything. I have to say I've not really been, a lot of times stuff comes to me, from anonymous emailers. Sometimes they've done it more than once, and then I know that they're credible. Quite frankly, full disclosure, our friend Big Mooby, he was at a practice or two, but I've not talked to him since he was on the show 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. I've kind of let him go do his thing, and he's a good friend of mine, but I don't want to call him up because if we start talking, it's hard for us not to talk about football, right? So he knows some stuff right now, and as a friend, I'm not going to use my friendship to try to find out what that information is. So he knows some stuff, and I'm not trying to get it from him. Once the game is played, I'll plug back into him and see what he thought. We'll compare notes, and we'll be able to talk somewhat as colleagues at that point. But out of respect to the program, respect to him, and his respect for the program, I don't try to, get that information from him. But I've not heard anything about what the questioner was asking. All right. Question number 10, Stever Joe says, give me your predicted starting lineup for Friday, including kickers. Just wants me to get right to it. All right, starting quarterback Peyton Thorne, wide receiver Jaden Reed, Trey Mosley, and Keon Coleman. Keep an eye on Jeremy Bernard, the true freshman from Washington. He is for real, is going to be a very good one. Tight end, I'm just kind of guessing it's going to be Tyler Hunt. Just a hunch. Barker's capable. I think Barker's going to have a better year than Hunt, I think. But I just kind of think Hunt's going to start for no good reason. Not that there's no good reason that he shouldn't start. I'm just saying I've not heard anything. I just think it's going to be Tyler Hunt, just a hunch. Offensive line, I think it's going to be Jared Horst. He spent some time away from practice a little bit. Brandon Baldwin got some work with the ones. I think Brandon Baldwin's going to play. Would not shock me if Brandon Baldwin starts, but I think it's going to be Horst. J.D. Duplain at left guard. At center, you have Nick Samak. At right guard, Matt Carrick. I'm expecting Matt Carrick. All indications are he's made a real nice return from his injury from last year. And I've not seen Brian Green around lately. I don't know if there's a little ailment there going on or not. But Brian Green last year, when I looked at the film of him against Central Michigan in the Sun Bowl, Matt Carrick is better than Brian Green. He's better than the Brian Green we saw last December in the bowl game when Matt Carrick was healthy. Matt Carrick last year healthy was better than Brian Green. How healthy is Matt Carrick now? Apparently healthy enough. So if they're both 100%, I would not be shocked if Carrick is ahead of Brian Green. That's kind of what I'm expecting. Could be wrong, but that's kind of what I'm expecting. Right tackle, I'm expecting Spencer Brown. He's missed a little bit of time here and there also. Ethan Boyd has gotten some time with the ones. Ethan Boyd is a mammoth individual, as Mel Tucker said on the Mel Tucker radio show tonight. Ethan Boyd looking somewhat athletic too. He's got a really good future. Spencer Brown, the junior, I think right now played in the bowl game. I think Spencer Brown was the guy they expected to be the right tackle coming in. I think Ethan Boyd has closed the gap. Is Ethan Boyd to the point where they can trust him and put him on the field? I think he's close, and I think he will get some time. But I think it's going to be Spencer Brown, unless they're a little bit nicks and bruises that are more problematic than I know about. But I don't think that's the case. Let me get back on Twitter and retweet that thing just to invite a few more in. We got a big crowd on tonight. People excited about Spartan football, the opening of the 2022 college football season. We love that tackle football. Love that tackle football, the manly art of tackle football. Retweet this one. Spartans and the Broncos getting ready to square off Friday night. Going to stripe the state, stripe the field. Let's go back to the stripes. You guys like that? Let's go back to that. All right, starting lineup continued. I left out running backs. So the running back, I'm going to say Jalen Berger. Would not shock me if it's Broussard. It was Berger earlier in camp. I've not heard anything that changes that, but it would not shock me if it becomes Broussard. They'll both get work. Who becomes the hot guy? Not sure. Different styles, different courses for different horses. For different games, it might be different, one player or the other, in terms of who has more success against different opponents. They both are excited. Broussard has to show that he is durable. Berger has a lot to prove in his own right. Simmons and Collins are back there competing, waiting for their opportunity as well, with some pretty good ability. On defense, at corners, I'm expecting Ronald Williams and Amir Speed. At safety, Xavier Henderson and Angelo Gross. Big year for Gross. If he's good, this defense has a chance to be quite good. But the gasket can't break with him. The rest of the defense. Defensive end, Jeff Pietrowski. I'm expecting Chris Bogle at the other defensive end. Brandon Wright is right there. And, you know, the indications about Jacoby Windman playing more seriously at defensive end, not just a hybrid, but more full-time defensive end. If that's the case, would not shock me if Jacoby Windman's in there a little bit. But I think Windman is going to be more the Pietrowski role. I think Pietrowski-Windman might split there a little bit. So I'm going to say Bogle. I have not heard a lot about Bogle this preseason camp, though. He came out and spoke to the media during spring practice and was a good interview. A little bit curious that he hasn't come out for interviews. Nothing against him, but if they don't have him out there, you know, they put people out there, they reward people that are doing well in practice and things are going well. They'll put him out there for the media. I haven't seen Bogle. Not sure what that means. Defensive tackles, Jacob Slade and Simeon Barrow. Going to be good. Those are your starters. But they're getting pushed. You know, Derek Harmon's right there. Linebackers. All right, this is where there's some depth. This is where you could go any number of ways. You know, Windman, I thought it was going to be Windman starting as an inside linebacker. Then I saw the weight, and it's good weight on him, and more the defensive end role. So I'm not expecting him to start at linebacker. You know, Cal Halliday started last year and was a good, solid freshman All-American, right? Brule is fast, gives him some athleticism. Darius Snow is thumping some people, playing to some real nice reviews. Reading between the lines, I think Snow's starting, people. Tucker was raving about his hitting ability today. I've heard other people talk about that. He's got more weight, knows the game. He's arriving, and he's driving on people. My hunch is Darius Snow and Aaron Brule are going to start at linebacker, with Halliday coming off the bench and having an impact. Ma'a Nateote coming off the bench, having an impact. Van Sumeren getting in there a little bit somewhere. but my hunch is Darius Snow and Aaron Brule starting at linebacker. Punter. All right, punter. I'm going to go with Bryce Behringer, of course, one of the best in the country. And at place kicker, I really have no idea. They added Ben Patton, the last-minute transfer from getting some texts from an interesting viewer right now. Can't really tell you what it's about, but anyway, at kicker, Patton comes in as the transfer from Auburn with some ability and some experience under severe pressure. Jack Stone, the true freshman. You got Russ Knack, the walk-on, who was kind of just a guy last year. I don't know. I've not heard. I'm going to say Jack Stone, just because he's been here longer. And when Ben Patton transferred in, what I was hearing from people was, well, I wouldn't think we need a kicker. Kicker's looking pretty good right now. So I was kind of hearing some positive rumblings about Stone. So I'm going to say Stone, the freshman. But Patton is right there, and Patton's capable. So the kicking situation, which I said through a lot of the offseason was a big X factor and worrisome, in my opinion. I'm going to say it's less worrisome. I think Stone's got a chance to do it, and if he falters, Patton is a good safety net. All right, question number 11. Question 11, defense first. He says, so there's been a lot of talk about the new great wide receivers. He says, I still believe it's the entire offensive unit that carries yardage in the passing game and running game. With that said, do you believe the passing game will be better or worse than last season, and why? Well, this is kind of a good question. Thanks for the question there, defense first from Parts Unknown. This is similar to the question that we talked about earlier with Peyton Thorne and his improvement, the game slowing down for him. And I'll be intrigued to see what that looks like on the field. He'll miss Naylor a little bit. But you're asking, will the passing game be better than last season? Last season was pretty good and it was explosive. Naylor was good. For instance, you have to have the running game. For instance, it was just 3 or 4 plays a game, but the flea flicker was a big play mechanism for Michigan State. And defenses had to honor the threat of the flea flicker like all the time. And that's because you had K9 back there. Without K9, is the flea flicker as much of a factor? They'll still run it. It'll still be part of their play action game. It might not be as devastating, but they'll run it. Will it be better than last year? I don't know. It's pretty good last year. I always like to see where Michigan State ranks in terms of their peer group in the Big Ten. Their peers in the Big Ten against other teams that play a Big Ten schedule. That, to me, is a litmus test. When you say Michigan State is, ranked number whatever compared to Colorado State, to me that doesn't mean much because they're playing 2 different schedules. Michigan State's passing attack last year. Oh, what the heck? We're on the air. I'll look it up. I should know it off the top of my head, but I like to see where they ranked in the Big Ten in terms of yards per pass attempt. And if this were a real show, I'd go to a commercial right now. But instead, we got dead air. But we are primitive here at SpartanMag.com, but I'll take this opportunity to invite you to go to SpartanMag.com, read our free content, consider becoming a SpartanMag.com subscriber over there. We've done, I think, a really great job in terms of preseason coverage. I don't blow our own horn a lot, but I think our preseason coverage was the best out there from any news organization in terms of Michigan State coverage for preseason camp. There's a lot of good writers out there, a lot of good outlets, but Paul Konerdijk really worked hard. Jake Laskawa came in as an intern, really worked hard. I put in some time, including the video of press conferences, practice video. A lot of help from Noah Sprunger, Jason Killip doing a great job. Jason Killip, great job as our recruiting anchor. Noah Sprunger behind the scenes, up in the box, calling a lot of shots, doing a good job. We appreciate all those people. Go over to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. Also, give us a thumbs up here on this video and become a subscriber to this channel. I think tonight we're going to go over 6,000 subscribers. We're really excited about that. Passing offense last year, Michigan State was number 6 in yardage, and in average yards per attempt, Michigan State was third. Michigan State was third in the Big Ten in yards per pass attempt at 8.2 yards per pass attempt. Ohio State was number 1 at 10. Nebraska number 2 at 9.3. Nebraska, what a freakazoid outfit that is. With Martinez last year, they were explosive, but they could never finish. Martinez would throw it away. He'd make big play, throw it away. But Michigan State was number 3 in the Big Ten in yards per pass attempt. Will they be better than that? Better than third in the Big Ten? That's hard to do. I kind of doubt it. Even though Thorne's going to be better, I just don't know if the entire outfit will be better than third in the Big Ten. Question number 12. We're going through this pretty quick, people. We're going to be out of here in 90 minutes tonight. Get everybody ready to get all lathered up and ready for Friday night. When you come to Michigan State Friday night to stripe the stadium, go to our SpartanMag.com Facebook page. Do a search for that. Go to Facebook, search SpartanMag.com, and there's information on one of the posts. Probably go down 7 or 8 posts a couple of days ago about traffic information and traffic closures. Some of you may have seen that information elsewhere on various locations, but if you're not aware of it, that's one place to look. So first of all, be aware of traffic slowdowns and different, some of the. I think there's some closures, 96, 496. So be aware of that, firstly. Secondly, make sure you eat all the proper foods, take in all the proper liquids, check your oil, do all those things, tape your wrists, tape your ankles, get ready for football. Friday night, Michigan State, Western Michigan, stripe in the stadium. Make sure you take care of yourself pregame and postgame. Get ready for a big 2022 season. Question number 12, Mr. Spartan 2U from Washington, D.C. This is our second question from our nation's capital tonight. He says, first, a shout out to all Spartans in the D.C. area. He says, hope to see you at the Green and White Gala at the National Press Club the night before the Michigan State-Maryland game, hosted by Michigan State President Samuel Stanley. I didn't know about that. Night before the Maryland game. Write that down. I will be around there somewhere. We'll have time. He says, dress up, wear your tux. I don't have a tux. So I guess I can't go. But I don't know. A gala. I can't remember the last time I went to a gala. I've never been to a gala in Washington, D.C. You think they'd let me in there? Think Sparty Teacher's going to be there? I'd like to meet Sparty Teacher. I'm sure he could show me a couple things. Teacher does a lot of good work there in D.C. as a tour guide. I think he does some guides of the Ford Theater. Is it Ford's Theater or Ford Theater? Konadike and I were there outside the Ford Theater when Michigan State was at the regionals in D.C. back in 2019 when Cassius Winston took Michigan State to the regional championship in the Elite Eight when they beat Duke. Remember that when that was in D.C.? Konadike were there. We walked over there, and we couldn't get in. It was, it's closed or something, and we were busy. But, I'm not big on those type of things, but I have to say when I was there, I wanted to go. I am big on those. I don't like the whole. It's kind of it's creepy. It's history, but there's a creepy fascination to it. Turns my stomach a little bit. Anyway, Gala, Washington, D.C., night before the Michigan State-Maryland game, which is going to be a tough one. Maryland's offense is going to be explosive. Loxley's done a better job at Maryland than I anticipated. I mean, he was just a train wreck at New Mexico State. Went to Maryland, and I understood the hire at the time after the tragedy that they had. They needed someone like Loxley that had a lot of credibility in the DMV and the Maryland, the university community and the local community, and he has that. They needed that. So I thought he was a good bridge hire to whatever was next, but he's been more than a bridge hire. He's got a chance to make some noise. I don't know. Maryland's one of those teams you better not fumble it. You better not give them an extra possession because they can score really well. You get in trouble. Ohio State has found that out a couple of times. They've had some scraps with Maryland. So nothing's easy in the Big Ten. All right, Mr. Spartan to you out of Washington, D.C. says, after saying wear your tux, he says, my question for Jim Comparoni, how do you watch football games on TV versus from the press box? He says, you break down game action so well. How do you see those little things on TV that I only see in person? Where are your eyes? Is there a method? Suggestions? Thank you for the compliments. How do I watch it? Well, I think I've said this before. When I watch a game live from the press box, I'm only looking at the defensive coverage because that might be something that you won't see on TV later. Sometimes the coverage depends on who's broadcasting the game. If it's Big Ten Network or Fox, a lot of times they'll show all 22 players. If it's ESPN, they'll like focus in on like just the box, 9 versus 9, and they won't show the secondary. So I'm not sure I'll be able to see the secondary and the coverage on television when I get home and watch it later. So I watch the secondary, try to pick up what the coverage is, and usually it shows itself. Sometimes it's unclear, but I want to see it live, see that, and then I'm not really sure where the ball went. Then I try to catch up with the ball. Then I watch it live on TV in the press box, because usually the feed in the press box is about 4 seconds late. So then I'll watch it again and see what the blocking scheme was or whatever would happen in the game. And then the TV usually shows a replay. So I'm usually watching the play for a third time before the ball is snapped again. Hopefully, if it's all synced up well, I can see the play 3 times before the next ball snapped. But sometimes this is either like too slow and I don't get through it again, or if the team's running like a really fast hurry-up offense, I don't get to see it a second or third time. But the first time, I'm just watching the coverage. And other stuff, I just try to take in information, just trying to keep my ear to the ground. And then on Monday or Tuesday, I might, if I get a chance, ask a couple of coaches if what I saw is what I thought I saw, and try to learn as I go. And there's been some really good coaches at Michigan State over the years that have had a lot of patience with me, that have helped me gain a better understanding of what's going on in the field. Jeff Stoutland was very good. Roshar was very good. Todd Grantham was helpful. Jim Bowman was helpful. Those line coaches, Narduzzi was helpful. There have been a lot of them. I don't want to leave anybody out. Hey, Jim McElwain was helpful. I liked working with him when he's a wide receivers coach. Brad Salem was helpful. I appreciate that. And there have been a lot of good ones. Some good ones currently on the staff right now, but just trying to learn as we go to try to deliver some insight and a credible product to SpartanMag.com subscribers, as SpartanMag.com strives to become your source for Michigan State sports and a credible news organization. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the post. Question number 13, Spartan OX from Parts Unknown. He says, what is the second string offensive line? He says the starters are pretty obvious, and all we seem to get is coach speak. We know Green can play, but what is the development level of the youngsters, Baldwin and so forth? He says if there are injuries along the offensive line, they will make or break the season. That's his question. Yeah, you're right. If there's injuries, second string offensive linemen become key, and if they have to play a lot, that's going to be asking a lot. I'm not sure they're there yet, but there is some size and some talent there. Tucker was asked a little bit about Gino Vandermark tonight, and the comment that Tucker said was the guy has tree trunks for legs. He's a big guy. They've got some jumbo guys. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. I've got a call here, but I'm not sure that the person knows I'm on the air, so I'm going to say hold on. Bear with me. Hold on. Hold on. Because this is kind of a rare circumstance. Apologize. Anyway, in terms of second string offensive line, he says if there's injuries, they'll make or break the season. Okay. All right. Hold on a second. Like I give him the number. We're gonna have a guest here in a second. You guys can probably guess what's going on here. All right. Anyway, let me find my place. If there's injuries on the offensive line, here we go.
Call from
Big Move.
All right.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right, let's go out to our friend Ron Armstrong, Big Movie. We mentioned him earlier in the show, but he called in and he's watching. He wants to be part of it, and we are certainly glad to bring him aboard and see what he has to say as we are within 48 hours of kickoff for the 2022 college football season at Michigan State University. Ron Armstrong, how you doing, my friend? Welcome to 2022 football. You ready?
Yes, sir. You know, going a little renegade. We usually kind of coordinate when we're not really going to be a part of this, but you know, I was watching the show and figured I'd just, you know, jump on in and get going. You know, I'm ready to get going with the season and got me fired up. So I'm like, let me just go renegade off script a little bit and call in.
I really appreciate it. And I was talking earlier, I was saying that we hadn't had you on because I know that, hey, you know, you got some friends in the program and we respect that. And I don't try to dig information from you at times like this. When we get into the season, I like to certainly compare notes and we'll go full throttle at that point. But, you know, there's always things that you're not allowed to tell us. We appreciate that. But in terms of things that are out there in public and matchups coming up against Western Michigan and what this program is looking like and what the team's looking like, we can certainly address those things. Now, Michigan State football, you're in town here in East Lansing. You're aware of the buzz, and there is some substantial buzz around here. People are excited, and there was a big crowd over at Reno's East tonight for the Mel Tucker radio show. People are excited, albeit, you know, the Friday night of Labor Day weekend is a great tradition, but it's still difficult to sell out against a MAC opponent. But I'll be interested to see if the crowd's even a little bit bigger than normal, but you know they're going to be loud. What are your thoughts heading into the season? What's the buzz like over there on your end of town? What's it look like?
I think there's a ton of juice. You know, hey, my dog's even fired up. I think there's a ton of juice. You know,
he's a Spartan dog.
He's fired up. He's ready to go. He's got the mouthpiece in. But no, I think you know, everybody's excited, man. And you know, I was sitting here being a fan, just watching the show, and I'm like, you know what? Let me tap in with Comp and call in because I am fired up, and I think you know there's a lot of talent, and you know we talk, you know, you and I talk all the time, but I'm excited about the bottom of this roster.
Yeah,
you know, we can talk. I mean, you guys know the starters, they know the names, but man, there's a lot of guys that are going to show up on Friday night that fans aren't going to know their name when the ball's kicked off on Friday night. But by the end of that game, you're going to see some kids. There's a lot of good football players. I think if I were just, you know, my personal opinion, this is as much talent we've had on our roster as some of the really good D'Antonio teams. There's a lot of talent. There's a great looking body types. Now there's some question marks to some kids that are going to have to go out there and get it done on game day. But as far as just ability and looking the part, we got some good football players, and I'm excited, man. Like, I'm ready to go.
Keon Coleman has been doing a lot of good things. People are excited about him. The running back situation is interesting and exciting with Berger and Broussard in there. The tight end situation is good. And you and I have talked about this, and I agree with you about the bottom 40. Nick Saban used to talk about the bottom 40 of your roster. That'll tell you what kind of team you have. At the very top of the roster last year, there was Kenneth Walker. And he had a difference, maybe turning. You know, I thought even with Walker being as great as he was, I thought top to bottom, I thought Michigan State was like an 8-4 roster last year, even with Walker, and they got more out of themselves than 8-4. The coaches got it out of them. The players got it out of themselves. They went 11-2. They overachieved. And like Tucker said last January, he says we as coaches, we felt like we got everything we could out of that roster. Kenneth Walker had a lot to do with that. They had some favorable bounces, but maybe more importantly, they rarely, if ever, beat themselves. Kind of took a page out of the Northwestern book in that regard in some instances. Without Walker there, I think that it's I think, you know, last year I thought maybe it was like if you'd have taken Walker off the roster, I think it was like a 6-6 roster. This year without Walker, I'm thinking it's more like a 7.5 win roster right now. 8-win roster, that before I see them, and you know more about them than I do, that's just kind of my thought, is that the rest of the roster is better than last year. But you don't have that
For sure.
that great difference maker on the top. Maybe some others can come up and pick up some of that slack. But the bottom 40, the Nick Saban bottom 40 is better. And I'll be intrigued to see what impact that has, because there's competition for playing time all over the field.
I think there's an old adage: you don't win with your best player, you lose with your worst player.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we, like there's guys that, obviously, but what the point I'm getting at is there's a lot of guys right now that can help us play winning football. And I think they know it. The coaches know it. Our kids know it. It's just about going out there showing it. Now, to your point about about K9, we're not going to, that's lightning in a bottle. And if folks are expecting us to just have that happen again, I would, caution you to say, hey, just, that was a once in a lifetime deal that we're getting a kid that's going to be that good, but we won't need, I don't think we'll need anyone to be, to save us like that, because across the board, we've improved. The secondaries, I'm more excited. Listen, I'm fired up to see this defense. I think we should be so much more improved on defense. Like, the offense is going to be fine. There's talent across the board. I think Keon's going to have a big year. Honestly, I think I'm more excited to see Trey Mosley. I know what Jaden Reed's going to do, but Trey Mosley is just that warm blanket when you have a cold. Like, I'm excited to see Trey Mosley take that next step. I think he's going to have a huge year for us. I think Keon's going to have a big year. Bernard, I can tell you this, I think he's a better player than our coaches even expected. So the receiving room is fantastic, but I'm excited about that defense. I think we're going to surprise a ton of people on defense. The amount of pieces we have, the matchups we can throw out there week in and week out, depending on the offense we're going to face. I'm fired up to go, man. Like, I'm so excited about the roster and the pieces we can put out there defensively. I think having another year in our system, there's some things that I thought maybe last year we probably could have done, but we just didn't have the knowledge of the defense. You talked about the offense earlier. I think we're going to be more consistent just because I think Thorne and our receivers have a better understanding about conceptually what we want to do, the ability to audible at the line. It's just having another year in the program, with that coaching staff and these players. I'm excited, man. I was like I said, I was sitting here being a fan, just watching and listening. I'm like, you know what? And I was, I'm sorry, man, I was interrupting you. Joe texting me. I'm like, you know what? Let me just call.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm fired up, man. And look, I'm trying. What Dad Tony used to say, keep the lion in the cage. Trying to keep the lion in the cage.
Yeah.
Don't want to peak too early. It's only Wednesday. But man, I think, listen, this is a good football team. And I don't think we should run from that. Okay. Don't run from the expectation. This is a good football team. And sometimes the bounces go your way. 11-2 last year. Like, we didn't win a lot of fluky games. K9 just outplayed scheme. And that's what supreme talent will do. They'll outplay scheme. So it wasn't fluky in that, we had bounces go our way. It was just we had one guy that could outplay scheme. This year, we have enough talent to go out and win games just because we're a good football team.
I'll be curious to see, Jay Johnson has been eager to have, actual talent at the tight end position that he can utilize. He loves it. Now he's got a little bit of that. They did what they could with Hayward last year, turned him into a player, but he was not a complete tight end. With Barker coming in from Illinois, Tyler Hunt a little bit bigger. Hunt says that he wants to be able to move defensive ends as a blocker. That remains to be seen whether he can do that or not. And Malik Carr, if he has the whole engine and the wheels all going real well, he can be a factor, of course, too, and he's excited about it, and the coaches want to use him. I'll be intrigued to see how much the use of the tight end embarks on the game planning, and as games progress, in-game adjustments, how much that helps move chains in key situations. As good as they were last year, we still weren't seeing all of what Jay Johnson wants to do on offense. He won't have K9 this year, but there's a little bit more of a broad-based set of weapons for Jay Johnson this year, I think, especially with that quarterback.
I think Jay Johnson is sitting in his position meeting room, drooling with the options, with formations and route combinations that will be at his disposal with the skill set of the various positions we have. without giving stuff away, I just know that we can do a lot of different things that we couldn't, not necessarily we couldn't do just from a comfort standpoint last year. We didn't do. This year we'll have some opportunities, and just a little, and this isn't any inside information. This is my personal opinion. That tight end position, I wouldn't expect to see a ton of that till the weather changes. I think we're gonna just, when it's cold and it's bad weather, that's when the tight end becomes really important. Moving the chains, ball, keeping the ball, keeping sustaining drives. Just keep an eye on that tight end. Like, I think that's maybe something we'll keep in our back pocket and kind of let that grow into the offense. Just because I think the receiving core is so dynamic early on, we have time. The running backs. This is something, and this isn't any inside information. It's just my personal opinion. Our running backs can catch the football, so be ready to see that. This is anything I observed that practice is just my personal opinion that I thought we didn't utilize enough last year. But I think those guys all have the ability to catch the football. So Jay Johnson has to be thrilled at the weapons at his disposal. If you go back and look last year, we ran a lot of the same plays over and over. We had success with them, but we didn't do a ton of different looks. We didn't show a formation, or personnel groups. We didn't show a ton of different things. So I think this year, man, he just has to be thrilled with all the options that he has available to him. It's probably 7 receivers they feel comfortable with, 3 tight ends, 4 backs. That's just a lot of people to get out, a lot of bodies to game plan for. Listen, I'm fired up. The defensive side of the ball, I think we have 5 linebackers they feel comfortable with, putting out there. They could play winning football for us, 8 D linemen, and I've said this before, I've talked we're going to be as good as that offensive line. We got some young guys that are just the right size, the requisite size that you want for Big Ten linemen. We just need to get those guys in there and get their nose bloody and put their face in the fan and see what they do when the lights are on. But they look the part, and I think we're going to be pleasantly. I expect Brown and Baldwin and Boyd. I think those guys just get out there and do it. But they have all the ability in the world, man. Like, I'm so fired up about the young offensive linemen. Listen, man. If you go look at the body types, Comp, you've been around this for a long time. That 2013 team had NFL body types. Look at the body types of these kids right now. It's not much different than that 13 team. These guys look the part. It's just about getting out there doing it.
The defensive ends are a little smaller, right? But the game has changed since 2013.
The game's changed. For the most part, man, college football, here it's changed, but really this is interesting. You brought that up. The 2 teams on our crossover are kind of smash mouth.
Yeah.
So that'll be a challenge that we'll have to adjust towards. But everybody else,
Minnesota and Wisconsin, that's a
Minnesota,
tough draw.
Yeah, Minnesota, Wisconsin, we're going to probably have to play big. We'll probably have to play big personnel against those 2 teams.
Tough draw.
But everybody else, man, everybody else, we'll have the right guys that can, bend the corner and, pressure the quarterback from the edges. And those 2 guys, I won't say 2. I'm going to say the 4 guys inside are going to push the pocket enough that I suspect that we're going to have a decent pass rush. Slade and Barrow, I don't know of a tandem that's better in the country. They're as good as any group you're going to get, and I like what we're getting from Hansen and Harmon. They give us some, they give us some flexibility. We can play a 3-man front and some things of that nature. But got to throw that in for Coach D. Things of that nature. But yeah, man, I'm just fired up, man. Like I said, I went off script a little bit. We didn't talk. I just felt the need to call in just because, hey, man, it's 2022 football is upon us, man, and I'm stoked.
If Mark D'Antonio ever opens a restaurant or a general store in retirement, the name of the store should be Things of That Nature.
Things of that nature. It's got to be.
I'd go there. You talked about defensive tackles. Simeon Barrow and Jacob Slade. Slade was a productive pass rusher last year. And now he's worked with Brandon Jordan, and Slade is excited about having worked with Brandon Jordan. And Mel Tucker mentioned tonight on his radio show that Slade has kind of leaned out a little bit. He's kind of rearranged a little bit of that weight. He's still heavy and strong, but I take that to mean he's probably going to be maybe a tick quicker. And with this new knowledge, with the hand fighting inside and pass rush techniques and pass rush just plans of attack, The pass rush from the interior, which Nick Saban always used to say was the most important. If you can affect that quarterback from the point inside out, move him off his point, very, very important. And Slade can do it. And Barrow made some impact last year, but he played a lot of the year with that cast on his hand. And now he's a sophomore, a second-year player, redshirt sophomore. Barrow still might be better than anyone realizes. And Slade is good, and good as a pass rusher. The interior pass rush for Michigan State could become a problem for Michigan State opponents this year. I would expect it to become a problem, and it really needs to become a problem. And I think Michigan State is well suited and oiled up to make that happen with Barrow and Slade. One more thing, those two guys are not going to have to play every single down and get worn out, as we've seen Michigan State defensive tackles happen to them in the past. Because Harmon and Hansen are so solid, those two guys can stay fresh, theoretically, and keep their legs fresh for most games. They're not going to have to play 60 snaps a game, I don't think. All that equates to pass rush in the middle on first and second down from those two guys.
Right. I mean,
without having to blitz.
A couple things you touched on. Listen, I think the quickest impact a pass rushing specialist can have was interior guys. The main reason for that is guards and centers usually don't see guys that can rush the passer. Tackles are used to going against guys that have moves and hand fighting, but interior linemen are maulers. They're not used to going against guys that can do an up and under or, a pull through or whatever, any of these little, pass rushing things. They're not used to seeing that. So if you get a guy that's strong with his hands, has really violent hands like Slade, if you get a guy that's great with the bull rush like Barrow, and you teach them how to do a hand slap or a long arm club or these things that they're learning, when they go against guards and centers, they don't see that every day. Yeah, they might rep it out every now and then in practice, but they're used to getting into guys and moving people. So if you're telling me that BT has been working with interior guys, the offensive linemen they're going to face, they won't see that every day. They won't see guys that are clubbing them. They won't see guys that are two-man, pressure point on the outside arm or inside arm, depending on where we're shifting. They don't see that every day. So that's an immediate impact. So I expect a big year from Slade to Barrow, just because they were good football players last year, and that fine-tuning that BT brought. And then there's a different approach that Coleman has that may be slightly different from Burton, where Burton wanted to control the line a little bit more, and Coleman's like, don't get blocked. You're empowering these guys not to get blocked, to be a football player, be an athlete. And I think oftentimes we don't think of interior linemen as athletes, but if you're light on your feet, you have violent hands, and you're quick off the ball, you can be an athlete as an interior lineman. And you're going to see that, I think I'm really fired up about, like I said, I'm fired up about our interior linemen. I think those guys you're going to see immediate returns. I think sometimes, and I'm going to caution folks, sometimes it takes a little bit longer for outside guys to transition from practice field to game. Interior guys, it can be immediate just because their interior linemen aren't used to seeing it. Tackles are used to seeing pass rush moves and, long arm, forklifts and things like that. Interior guys aren't used to seeing that. So if game one, game two, we don't see the ends making an impact, it's nothing to be alarmed about. It's just they got to keep working their craft. But those interior guys, I think you can see that impact immediately.
I'm expecting those inside linebackers to be smarter, sturdy, quick, in the right areas, fewer false steps, whether they're dropping into pass coverage in zone or, picking up some man-to-man here and there, or, fitting the run, whatever they're doing, all around linebacker play, I expect to be a lot better. Scotty Hazelton's
linebacker play is going to look. I don't want to, and you know how I'm comp. I don't want to kind of point fingers at folks or whatnot. But I expect the linebacker to play probably of any position group that we're talking about to improve. I think our linebacker, partly because of just natural ability, we have some kids that are just they just have a better sense and feel for the position. There's a lot of, let's be honest, a lot of linebacker play, man, is just instinct and just feel. I can't tell you how to sift through traffic. I can't tell you how to see where the lineman is leaning. Some of that stuff you're just born with. Max Buller was just born with the ability to just kind of get a feel for what how they're trying to attack and how they're trying to block. I think we have some guys that are more instinctive as inside backers. Cal Halladay. We talk about Cal Halladay. Cal Halladay's ability to just sink under routes and have a feel for it. He's probably one of the better guys we've had in a long time at inside backer at that. And I'm not saying that just because he had a couple pick sixes, but just spatially sinking under routes and where he's supposed to be. It's just something you have. Like, certain linebackers are good at blitzing. I think comprehensively our group that we have in that linebacker room, the interior guys, Brule, man, I mean, his ability to run down the hole if we want to play that Tampa 2, I don't think we've had that. I can't recall a linebacker, an inside backer that could run, be the replace guy on a Tampa 2. Brule's that guy, man. He can run. He can get underneath routes. He can get underneath that the number 3 receiver to the trip side. So, like I said, I'm fired up, man. I think we got a really good football team, a lot of talent. That talent has to show up on game day. It's shown itself on the practice field. It's got to show up on game day, but it's there. And I think the coaches are fired up. They're going to kind of downplay it. But real quickly, I don't want to completely hijack the show, but you and I talked about maybe a couple, 2-3 years ago about Noah Kim.
Yeah.
And I said, man, there's something about that kid.
Yeah.
And I said, and I remember saying this. I said, I'm not saying he's Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that when that kid got in the huddle, kids responded to him. And it was just, and he was 3rd or 4th string back then. It was just something about that kid's demeanor that folks responded to,
Yeah.
And you look up and here he is, a solid number 2 with a great arm and really great understanding of the offense. And I mean, it's just certain things you kind of pick up, you see early on, and that kid just had it early on.
I remember you telling me that a long time ago, and it's interesting that you thought that that they responded to him the way they responded to Kirk Cousins early on, and that's one of the things that Kirk Cousins did. He can turn a whole roster to his side, and that's how he's won some quarterback battles against Keith Nickel here, who I thought was a very good quarterback, and then going to Washington and unseating RG3 over there. He's got a way of turning people to his side. No one, few have done that as well as Cousins did, but it's interesting that you said that he rallied those guys then and he stuck around, and he's not a guy that the Tucker staff recruited, but he's grown on them. All right, firstly, that's the Cousins comparison. I was talking to Paul Konendijk about this a couple days ago. There's other things about Noah Kim that remind me of Kirk Cousins also. They both were injured in high school as juniors, which scared off a lot of recruiters. They both went to Michigan State camp before that. Cousins came to camp, but he came to camp after his junior year. No one knew who he was, and Dan Enos knew who he was by the time he left. He had a big impact. But Noah Kim camped at Michigan State, I think before his sophomore year, because his middle school basketball coach was John D'Antonio, Mark D'Antonio's brother. So, he kind of directed him to go to camp. So they kind of knew who he was. And he was on a team there in Virginia that was state champion and won a ton of games and was looking pretty good. And then went through his junior year, won a state title as a sophomore, went through his junior year and was looking pretty good. Thin guy like Cousins, not a guy that's going to walk in a building and just who's that guy? He's not going to have that impact on you. Was winning a lot as a junior and suffered really a catastrophic injury, I think, in the semifinals as a junior. Broken femur, I think it might have been. The type of injury that makes people say, well, let's wait and see what he looks like next fall. Virginia Tech went ahead and offered that spring and got a commitment from him. So he made basically a placeholder commitment to Virginia Tech. Then went out and had a really good, I guess it was his senior year, and Michigan State got back involved with him, ended up flipping him and getting Noah Kim. But Noah Kim, a lot of, the leadership, maybe a different kind of leader than Kirk Cousins, but in terms of the way people respond to him, you picked up on that early. And just a skinny guy that could really just sling the ball at a young age. But a guy that had an injury as a junior that scared off some of the recruitment, a guy that did camp at Michigan State. Cousins and Kim have a lot in common there. And Konendijk and I were talking about this, and we said, Okay, is Kim a redshirt sophomore right now? How would he have competed against Cousins and Nickel back then when they were sophomores? Some similarities there, but anyway, it remains to be seen whether Kim becomes the guy for the near future. Caden Hauser is going to be in there competing with him, and that's going to be interesting going forward. But Kim has been a nice little bolster to the talent pool. He's managed to hang in there, and he's going to be number 2 on Friday.
One of the things I look at with quarterbacks is not the result of the play, but was it the right play? Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Was that the right throw? Was that the right read? Did you go through the right progression? And even if he might have one-hopped it or just didn't, it was the right play. You can fix the throw. We can make you make a better throw. But if you're not making the right read or you're not seeing the field properly, and I don't normally single kids out, but we had a quarterback that was highly touted in 2016. And, he was the chosen one, and that kid couldn't read a defense to save his life. I'm not going to say his name. You guys probably could figure it out. He transferred. He couldn't read a defense to save his life. He would just pre-decide, be pre-snap, this is where I'm going with the football, no matter what the defense does. And he threw picks every day in practice. Noah Kim, from day one, he made the right reads. College football never seemed too fast for him. Physically, he might not have been mature enough, but the mechanics of the game and understanding of the game from day one, he made the right decisions. And I think as a football player, when you're on the team, you're on the field, guys recognize that. Like, this guy gets it. He knows what he's supposed to do out here. He can command the huddle, even if it's a third string huddle. Those guys are leaving the huddle and they're all running their routes properly because they know if they're in the right place and the defense dictates it, they might get the football. And from day one, that kid had that.
And Noah Kim's arm talent is supposed to be pretty good too.
He can rip it. It's what it is, the balling. I don't know if he played baseball or not, but that throw that shortstops can make from deep short.
Yeah.
That everybody can. When you see it, yeah. That's what it looks like. He has that.
You mean that flat-footed hose, or do you mean like off the back foot?
Yeah,
flat-footed hose.
No, he has that hose that he can pat the glove and he can still get you out at first.
Yeah,
he has that. The ball just comes out his hand, and and he's not muscling up, man. It's just a natural throwing motion. The ball just pops out of his hand. He's a live arm, But a lot of kids with live arms develop bad habits.
Yeah,
he didn't come with those, which put him ahead of everybody else. A lot of high school kids with, great arms, they never learn how to read a defense. They can make up for not lack of knowledge with, arm talent. He didn't strike me as a kid that ever leaned on his arm talent to make up for not understanding where he should go with the football. He knew where he should go. He read the concepts. He understood the concepts, read the defense, and delivered the football where it should go. And I saw that early on. That hey man, I'm a freshman, but I still know the game. I know what I'm supposed to do out here. And it just to me, I saw it early on. Like, that kid, don't be surprised if he's a football player. Like, it's just something about the kid early on I saw. Like, he was reading cards. Like, I remember going out watching this kid throw 3 straight checkdowns, but they were the right play. Like, some quarterbacks say, I'm tired of throwing checkdowns. I'm going to throw the dig. Man, throw the checkdowns. It's the right play. Make the right read. Throw the football. Live with the result. And he was just, from day one, that's the kind of kid he's been.
Got to be able to process. Maybe we'll get a chance to see him in a comfortable situation on Friday.
I think if I were a gambling man, I'd tap the first few series, depending the score. And maybe not the first few. I would just expect to see a ton of different playing groups on Friday. Just because, we should, if things go the way we expect them to, we should be in charge of that game. And I expect to see a ton of people play, just getting folks on film with live action, and seeing what people can do. But I expect to see a ton of people play. I don't know if you guys chart, participants list, but I would expect to see 60 plus, it's going to be a lot of people playing Friday night.
That would be a good exercise for Michigan State if they can make that happen, if they can get to a comfortable situation and get a lot of guys into into the game. If Michigan State's good enough to make that happen, that would be another credit. I'd like to look at Western Michigan and think of one thing that they do well and maybe one area of the game within the game in which they will really test Michigan State. But right now, I'm still looking at Western Michigan. There's no film, of course. They've not played a game. They got a new quarterback, a redshirt freshman. So if they'd brought back that NFL receiver and the quarterback they had last year, then definitely the secondary would get a test. And Lester's going to have a good plan, and they did a good job with RPO last year. That's how they beat Pittsburgh. But they don't have that quarterback or that wide receiver, and now Jeff Thorne is the offensive coordinator, so we don't know for sure what that's all going to look like. But I don't know if there's one particular area. I'll have to look at it more closely to see if there's any area where they can test Michigan State. At some point, some blitzes are going to come, and it doesn't matter who the opponent is. If they're Division I scholarship guys, if they bring a well-timed, well-conceived blitz, that's good exercise for you to try to filter that out. We'll see that at some point with Michigan State, but I'm not really sure at this point. Now, I've got a lot of respect for Western Michigan. They were 8-5 last year, and they won a bowl game. I just don't know enough about them to know where precisely, in what area they could really threaten Michigan State. Even if the game becomes comfortable.
Without Sky.
Yeah, even if the game becomes comfortable for Michigan
without
State.
Sky Moore, without Sky Moore, I don't know. But I would say this: everybody has unscouted looks that you gotta adjust on the fly to. I just personnel wise. I think they're gonna try to throw bubble screens. I don't expect to see them running between the tackles much. Pillow fight football is typically what lower division teams you can sort of level the playing field if you go 5 wide. Not everybody has 5 DBs that can cover, so you can find some matchups there. I expect to see a ton of empty, unless our D linemen are winning the one-on-one battles. Then that kind of changes the dynamic completely. But early on, I think if you're Western, you try to go tempo. Early in the season, you want to go tempo, test guys' conditioning, test the operations of a defense, if your substitution patterns are established. So those are the things that you do early on if you're trying to spring an upset. Trick plays, block punts, things like that you try to spring an upset. But if you just lined up 11 on 11, I don't know personnel-wise where they could be in the game. Let's be honest. So it's really going to be what we do wrong, and if they can sprinkle in a few fluky plays or things that we didn't have coming, double passes and things like that, keep testing our guys' discipline. Early on, early season, trick plays usually work more early in the season because guys are fired up to make a tackle and running up and, pursuit drill and all that kind of stuff, hangover. But other than that, we should be fine.
Can you imagine Jeff Thorne, the father of Peyton Thorne, for this game? It's the former head coach at North Central College. He's making his Division I debut as an offensive coordinator, and he's going against his son's team. That's, talk about a day of days for a dad. Jaden Reed was talking about this yesterday. He says those Thorns are so competitive. He said that'd be over at their house playing cornhole, and those guys are trash talking each other, father versus son. So it's going to be one of those competitive games between father and son. Peyton Thorne said that his dad was the type of guy that would not let him win. He didn't beat him in driveway basketball, until he was better than his dad. So he was one of those dads. Turns out Peyton Thorne was gifted enough to handle that and keep charging forward. But this is just going to be another Thorne versus Thorne friendly competition, but it's not going to be cornhole or basketball out in the driveway. It's going to be football and a national audience with 75,000 people in the stadium with those two guys going against each other. Really, just intriguing.
It's a neat story, but Thorne doesn't play defense, so
Yeah.
That's great and all, but I think when when the rubber meets
Forward.
the road,
But this is just going to be another
guy's
Thorne
the
versus
quarterback,
Thorne.
so they're really not quite competing against each other. I get it; it's a great story.
Yeah.
But if you're from a preparation standpoint, hey man, my dad's got to go against our defense, and I got to go against their defense. So now, will there be some insight to maybe what dad might think son struggles with, and can tell DC, hey, this guy struggles towards the left.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that. I don't know.
And when Michigan State has the ball and Jeff Thorne is thinking about his next series for Western Michigan and he's watching his son go against this, he'll be rooting for incompletions for the first time in his life.
For sure. So there may be some of that stuff, but ultimately, man, once after a couple series, man, it just becomes ball. Like it just all slows down and just becomes you got to play. So, but at the same time, and that's got to be like I mean, a dream scenario for both, Thorne and his dad, man. I couldn't even imagine that. Like, if I were coaching and my son was out there, like, I would have to take some time to, kind of reel myself in, not, one, being proud of my son, but then just kind of taking in that moment. So, prior to kickoff, I think they'll both have to kind of center themselves and focus on the task at hand. But once the ball is kicked off, I think our 85 is better than their 85. So, that's really how it goes.
Got a question here in the comments section from Mark Jacobs. He says, give me a damn secondary, please. I understand the sentiment there. And I think that Michigan, this is something that you and I have talked about during the entire offseason and something that I've thought about. And I've mentioned it here in the past, and some people disagree with me, and that's fine. But I think Michigan State's individuals in the secondary are good enough to get it done, more than good enough. Ronald Williams now going into his second year as a defensive back at this level. He's not played defensive back his whole life, only just recently. He's got the size and a lot of the tools to make it happen, and I think a chance to make a big jump. He's a senior, but essentially he's a second-year college football player. Amir Speed, big guy, all kinds of ability. I think that he is poised to be more than capable at corner, and those guys can play some press, I would expect, and I would think they'd be able to shut some people down, which gives a defensive coordinator a lot of flexibility with his calls. Anyway, I think he's got ability. He has ability. I think Xavier Henderson last year played like at an all Big Ten clip for about 6 or 7 games. Had like a deep thigh bruise, which slowed him down, but he's got a lot of heart. He could have tested the pro waters, but he came back. Wants to be a part of it. And to quote Mel Tucker tonight, he said he's been lighting it up in preseason camp. So Henderson's going to be solid. We'll wait and see with Angelo Gross. I expect the linebackers, like you said, to be much improved, not only in terms of fitting the run, but their pass drops in zone or picking up their guys in man-to-man, whatever it be. Good athleticism with Snow and Brule. Halliday with that feel, like you mentioned. And, some new coaching there at the linebacker level and some improved know-how at the linebacker level. So I think that back seven is good. And people might say, well, geez, Michigan State gave up more passing yards than everybody in the Big Ten. You just made them sound like All-Americans. Well, individually, I thought they were good last year, but there's reasons that those numbers became amplified last year. The first half of the season, I thought they were doing a little bend but don't break, which is what they needed to do against some of their opponents in order to win games, especially the Miami game. They gave up 320 yards passing to Miami, but it was bend but don't break. They didn't give up any big plays. They gave up 16 points. Miami ended up being one of the top 10 passing attacks in the country. Michigan State, I think, played 3 of the top 5 passing attacks in the country. Ohio State, Western Kentucky, Maryland, Purdue, Nebraska, and Miami were like 6 of the top 13 passing attacks in the country. Michigan State faced all of them. Second half of the season, you saw some more busts take place. It seemed like Michigan State tried to add to the volume, tried to add and do more things and become more varied and less bend but don't break. Really starting with that Michigan game, they played a little bit more man-to-man and got burned. They couldn't cover number 1, first of all. And Michigan picked on Gross. And as Michigan State, it seemed like tried to add more operations were blown up in their face a little bit, to the point where in the Penn State game, Mel Tucker took the grease board on the sideline and pounded it and took it over in terms of expressing where guys were supposed to be in given situations. When a head coach is taking those things over, you kind of can anticipate there's going to be some reshuffling. Michigan State did some reshuffling. So Michigan State was not prepared to add to their scheme as the season went along. But beginning of the year, even though they're giving up yards, I thought they were playing winning football in a lot of ways in that secondary. The opposition was very good, like I said, and the wheels kind of fell off as the season went along. Now you got Mel Tucker coaching the corners. Harlan Barnett probably is more comfortable with the safeties, just having a louder voice and those two guys going back and forth on things. Scotty Hazelton, he's the defensive coordinator. The buck stops with him. It stops with the head coach as well, but it's his defense. And now he's no longer defensive ends coach. He's linebackers coach. He's coaching the middle of that defense. And it's on him to improve there, and he's setting out to do it. And I think all of those combined, they can't get any worse than giving up more yards than anybody else. But I've pointed out, as bad as they were not number 14 in the Big Ten in yards allowed per pass attempt. They're number 10, which is not great. It's not good enough, but it's not dead last. I think they were like 71 or 67 in the country in yards allowed per pass attempt. One of the problems is the biggest problem was getting off the field on third down. As you've mentioned before, Michigan State played more plays on defense than anybody in the country. They played like 2 more games worth of plays than Minnesota. So those things wore them out as well because Gross and Henderson were playing every down because they didn't have much depth at the safety position. As bad as they were statistically, I think they have a chance to not only go from terrible statistically to functional, but I think they can go from terrible to pretty good to quite good in pass defense. That doesn't mean they're going to hold everybody under 150 yards passing. Nobody does that except Alabama and Georgia, and they don't even do that to everybody. I mean, even the good defenses give up 300 plus passing somewhat often. So you're going to give up completions. There's a lot of people out there like, why do they keep complete? Nobody ever comes out and throws the ball and goes 0 for 25. That does not happen in this sport. I'm not saying they're going to hold teams to 0 for 25, but I think pass defense can be quite good this year. I might be wrong, but that's kind of what I'm thinking and expecting this year because I think the individuals are good and the coaches are good. Angelo Gross has to come around.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
I think there's so many things to unpack there. Number one, the sheer amount of snaps. We can't have our safeties playing that many more snaps than everybody else. I think there's going to be some situational football where you might see 3 corners on the field. I think they're comfortable that we have 4 or 5 corners that we can put out there that are A, capable of covering, and B, physical enough that they can get run fits for us that you may see a safety off the field in certain situations. And that'll depend on, the personnel we're facing and down the distance. But I think that position group as a whole has matured to the point where we have a ton of guys that can play. I like the first 5 corners I think can all help us in various ways. Then you throw Justin White in there, who's just a wild card, and he runs around, and you got some freshman kids that are good athletes. So that defensive back room as a whole, I think the talent level is improved. The understanding of the defense and the trust. Some of the busts, I think, as I watch film, some of those blown assignments were a lack of trust. That maybe, I didn't believe that the linebacker was going to be where he should have been, so I tried to make a hero play or some, things of that nature. I think there's more trust back there. I think there's more confidence in the guys. From a safety standpoint, there's more confidence in guys in front of them that they can just play football and not feel like they have to make hero plays and guess, jump routes and things like that. The corners, like I said, I think there's 5 corners that our defensive backs coach Tucker and those guys feel comfortable with. So I would be surprised if they don't make a drastic improvement. And let's face it, there were plays to be made last year that they didn't make a play on the ball, or they were misaligned. Some of that stuff was pre-snap errors and some live football errors. They just didn't make a play on the ball. I expect that the corners to turn the corner and make no pun intended, to make a large leap. Now that safety room, we're still looking for those young guys to get ready. I think the injury to Spencer set him back just a little bit. I think he had his nail a little nicked up. But overall, I do like our defensive back room. I still think we need a couple of safeties to get up to speed, if you will. But I do like that group, man, and I think we're going to be able to do some different things with all those guys moving forward. So if it's not Gross, if he's not ready, or he's not playing up to where I think they think he needs to, we have the bodies to be flexible this year.
All right, and you mentioned those safeties having to play so many downs last year. That was indicative of Michigan State, one area in which they were lacking in that bottom 40 because Gross and Henderson had to play so much because they did not trust the second string safeties last year. Right now, it's my understanding, Mangum is in there, the true freshman. He's he's working with the twos, and Khalil Majid, a former walk-on, is working with the twos. That's what Angelo Gross told us a couple of weeks ago. If you know more than that, you don't have to disclose that. But basically, the second string safeties, that's an area where the bottom 40 needs to be stronger. And as far as same pageness, like I like to call it, Xavier Henderson says that the call-outs and communication and pre-snap are a lot better this year, not only between himself and Gross, but Henderson really loves playing with Darius Snow in front of him because Darius Snow is a very cerebral player. Between Snow and Henderson, there's just a lot more communication, which provides a better chance for everybody to be on the same page if things change based on a motion or, like a player going in motion or a trade or a shift or a different, an unseen formation. Guys being communicative and getting on the same page helps you survive a down and stay on the field. There's a feeling that they're better there, and that's a great place, a great jumping off point. As far as the corners go, you've got the five that you mentioned. You got Ronald Williams and Amir Speed, a couple of transfers. Kimbrough, transfer from Florida. Chuck Brantley, a sophomore that made an impact last year. And Marquis Lowry, who played some physical football last year, also a transfer. Those corners have all been on the field. They're not going to be freaking out. They are eager to prove that they are better than last year's stats, and that's an interesting factor as well.
Last week, before I jump, you said something. You said communication, and I was once told this by a coach. If you check to a call and we're all wrong, but we're all on the same page, we're fine. We can still get off the field if all 11 are doing the same thing, even if it may have been the wrong check. What we can't survive is if 8 guys see it differently than 3 guys. And I think we had a lot of that last year. So if we're all on the same accord and we, the linebacker makes a call and it may be the wrong check, but as long as all 11 are doing the same thing, we can make the tackle and get off the field. That won't, when I coach defensive backs, I said the one thing we don't want to hear is the other team's fight song. And I think far too often we heard the other team's fight song, maybe because all 11 weren't seeing the same thing. So this year, we need somebody to take leadership of that huddle and make a call and get everybody to live with that call. As long as all 11 are on the same page, that defense can still make a play. So it's good to hear that Henderson said that guys are seeing the stuff with the same eyes, and it's but it remains to be seen who's going to take charge of that defense. Ideally, you want to be a middle linebacker. There's something about the defense led by the Mike backer. It just seems like guys kind of, maybe because he's in the center of the formation, defensive formation, guys sort of feel like there's a comfort level to that, but somebody's got to take charge of that and be the voice that guys listen to. And I don't know who that is yet, and it remains to be seen. But as long as all 11 are on the same page, you can get a guy on the ground to get in the huddle. You don't. And lastly, you don't lose games because you gave up yards. You lose games because you give up points. So as long as that thing doesn't hit the end zone, you still got a chance to get off the field. And so fans might get upset about bend but don't break. But hey, man, you don't lose if a team has 600 yards and 3 points. I like our chances.
Sure. Xavier Henderson, to your point, says that, and this is something I didn't hear last year, but he says just exactly what you said. Even if we're wrong, we all have to be wrong together. And he didn't say this, but hey, giving up 14 yards, you can live with that. You don't want the whole thing to break and give up 60. But he says the linebackers are the law. Even if I see it different than them, than they see it, if a linebacker calls something out, that's the law. That's what we're doing. That's to your point. And that's something I didn't hear last year. And it almost seemed like a new discovery for Xavier Henderson this year. I don't know.
I think that if that's the case, that's a really positive development because you're taking something like there's enough things that you're playing deep safety. Man, there's so many things that you got to make sure the corners are in the right place. They're echoing the call. You got to get the other safety aligned right. So if you're not the guy that the defense is looking to make sure everybody's lined up properly, it just takes that's one less thing you got to worry about in pre-snap. You can focus in on, the formation and the down and distance and playing more instinctively. The Mike backer, you want your backer to make that call. You want him to lead the defense. it's rare that when there's a defensive huddle, the safety's the guy standing outside the huddle making the call. It's the Mike backer for a reason. You want that inside guy making the call and playing with the right eye discipline. So that's great to hear. And I mean, if you think about some of the challenges we had last year, to be honest with you, that defense, it started with our linebackers and could we trust them to be in the right gaps and the right drops. So hearing Henderson say that that's encouraging that there's that much confidence in that linebacker group.
What are you guessing in terms of Big Ten East? Ohio State changed defensive coordinators, bringing in Knowles, the defensive coordinator from Oklahoma State, who had a really good defense last year at Oklahoma State. Ohio State's big weakness last year was the nightmarish problems they had in terms of defensive organization, firing their defensive coordinator basically midway through the year, 1/3 of the way through the year. Ohio State, very popular pick to be among the top 2 teams in the country. Ohio State was very good last year, blew out Michigan State last year, lost to Michigan, went to the Rose Bowl, came back, won that game, and it's considered a bad season. They won the Rose Bowl. It's considered a bad season. Everybody's expecting Ohio State to be better this year. We've not seen Ohio State play yet, but your gut feel, is Ohio State going to be better than they were last year?
Offensively, they're going to be really good. But the one caution I have about Ohio State defensively is I didn't see those guys win a lot of individual battles. The way they recruit and, the hype, certainly they've earned a lot of that with, their on-field success. But at some point, you got to be able to beat the guy in front of you. And when they play Utah in the Rose Bowl, they weren't winning a lot of, individual matchups. Ohio State should, if we're following the recruiting rankings and the players are who they say they are, they should be able to line up and win some of those matchups. And I didn't see a lot of that. So scheme can only take you so far. At some point, those guys are going to got to line up and beat the guy in front of them. And if you think about their defensive schemes before, they weren't really exotic. They just could win individual matchups. Chase Young could beat your tackle. The Bosa brothers could beat your tackle. And if you go back to the 15 season when we beat them down there, I mean, the fact of the matter is Conklin outplayed Bosa. They couldn't win the individual. Our D linemen, interior linemen, outplay their interior linemen. At some point it's going to come down to, can you beat the guy in front of you? And you and I have talked about them going with that defensive concept they went against Alabama was idiotic. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat that. But you're playing Utah, and you guys can't go out there and line up and just impose your will. That's not scheme. That's talent and that's want to. So I don't know. Those guys are supposed to be talented. They had the one kid, I can't forget it. I remember 33. I'm drawing a blank on his name. He was a highly touted. No, the end. He was the highly touted kid they had that was supposed to be all-world freshman last year. He's supposed to be a really good kid. Number 1 recruit in the country a couple years ago, but I didn't see him really do much. My point is, though, at some point, your defensive guys, the guys you recruited, they got to take pride in just beating the guy in front of them. And I don't know if you're telling me that maybe they were out of position by formation or the scheme was flawed. Okay, that's fine and all. I mean, you can correct those things, but individually, it's got to be a pride thing that, hey man, I'm gonna beat the guy in front of me. And I didn't see a ton of that. So it remains to be seen if that changes just by changing the DC. Yeah. How much of that changes? But yeah. I didn't see a ton of that.
If they lose 2 games again this year, after the changes, there's gonna be some. I'm not gonna say panic, but everybody's assuming Ohio State's gonna reload. If it doesn't happen, that could. I mean, you could. It wouldn't take. I think Ohio State's going to be very good. I think they're going to beat Notre Dame comfortably and have a great season and all that stuff. But if it doesn't happen, all of a sudden you could get a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for in the Big Ten East? A little bit of instability, possibly. It's possible.
Tom, the further they get away from. See, this is a misnomer about Ohio State. Okay, they had Tressel and they had Urban Meyer. And we're gonna gloss over the one guy, Cincinnati's coach era. That was kind of a stopgap. Yeah. But Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel were power running teams. out of spread formations. They weren't five wide. They weren't the Big 12. They were physical down here running teams, but they would spread you out and do that. You know, they ran counter tray, and they would, you know, they ran the football with power. The further they get away from that, the more they look finesse. And if you look at that defense, they were finesse. They played a lot of catch coverage. They weren't getting after people. And then you go out and you bring in this guy from the Big 12. And I'm looking at, you know, still, to me, it's more the same. At some point, you're going to have to put 2 chin straps on, put your mouthpiece in, and play Big Ten football. And that involves getting into people's face. And I just didn't see that from them. You know, they were okay winning 45-42.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know how. I mean, and maybe that guy, you know, they brought in from Oklahoma State is, you know, maybe he gets after and lights a fire in those guys. But I just know that their identity on offense is far more finesse, far more throw the ball 45 times than it is, you know, Ezekiel running between tackles. It's Antonio Pittman running the football. It's Beanie Wells running the football. It's not that. You know, they're pass first, pass second. I thought too many times last year they forgot about, you know, their running back. Was it Henderson?
Yeah.
You know, I didn't think he got the ball enough. You know, and it's tough. I get it. You have, you know, 3 all-world receivers, you know, and this quarterback that can just, you know, drop, you know, throw dimes. I get it. It's hard to just turn around and hand the football off. But what ends up happening is your defense, your team, they face pillow fight football all day in practice.
Yeah.
During camp. And yeah, you're like, we have these inside run periods. It's more often than not, your defense takes on the identity of the offense the other way around. And if you look at that team, man, they were finesse on offense and they were finesse on defense.
And all of a sudden,
changes,
in the last 2 games against Michigan and Utah, they had trouble stopping a bloody nose. They couldn't.
Yeah, and think about this. When's the last time you think about this? When's the last time Ohio State could line up and run the football when you knew they had to run it?
And also when and that's cute and everything, putting up those numbers and those yards against teams like Michigan State that couldn't stop it last year. But when it became 25 degrees Thanksgiving weekend, and you know the quarterbacks from California and all the receivers are from Florida and Texas.
That's where you got to turn around and hand the rock off to your running back. He's going to tote the thing 35 times.
They looked different. I mean, just like your basic.
But that's identity.
10-yard out route.
That's identity, right? That's identity and that's belief. Like, hey man, you know what? We're going to lean on people. We're going to turn around and we're going to hand this thing off. And if you think about this, okay, if you think about the 15 game against us, they lost the game. I mean, look, our team went out there and played their tails off. But they lost the game primarily, in my opinion, because they didn't go and just make this a pillow. You know, we're going to hand the ball off to Zeke 35 times. And you're going to have to stop him 35 times. In terrible weather, you're going to have to stop him 35 times. And if you're perfect, you'll win. But if you're not perfect, let's say you do it 32 out of 35 and he leaks out for 3 of them, we're going to win the game. They didn't do that. And they just, to me, they get further and further away from that. And I just look at that team and I'm like, you know, they're not physical. Ohio State, man, for all their success, they won a lot of games on the defensive side of the football. If you look at their pros, a lot of those pros are defensive players. And I just think they just got away from that identity there. We're going to lead with our defense and we're going to play complementary football to that defense. They just, you know, the quarterback's going to throw 48 times. You have 600 yards passing, and you're going to win 45-48. Yeah. Great. Is that sustainable in the Midwest?
It's hard to be, you know, big, you know, championship consistency without a reliable defense. And, you know, last year they got a little bit
and then think about this, okay? And think about when you're playing, Purdue, and they want to throw the ball 60 times a game, and you throw the ball 60 times a game. What's the difference in those 2 teams? You're giving away your advantage talent-wise if you just play a pillow fight football game with Purdue. But if you line up and you run the football and you can win in the trenches, you keep that quarterback off the field. Purdue can't run the football. They're not going to run. But if you can run with Henderson and he can, chunk you, they're not getting on the field. We'll see. Well, it's going to be interesting to see if they get back to running the ball and being a little bit tougher. Because I don't think if you watch how they played Minnesota in the opener last year,
Ooh.
Minnesota was the tougher team.
Ooh. And everybody has Ohio State penciled in one of the top 2 teams in the country. Everybody.
I saw that. Notre Dame's a 17.5-point dog.
Go back and watch Ohio State's last 2 games from last season.
I remember them. Defensively, they didn't show up. And matter of fact, if you go back and watch the Purdue game, there's 2 turnovers early in that game that turned the tide of that game.
Yeah.
2 turnovers.
Yeah. That
Purdue couldn't recover from.
Yeah.
But Ohio State really didn't. They weren't out there, just shutting them down.
No.
And I think defensively, they got to get that. I don't know what happened. Maybe they just kind of became a victim of their own success. I don't know. But their identity on defense is just, and they give up so many big plays. It's to me, man, I think if I were them, I simplify their concepts and I let my talent play football.
Well, Knowles is not the first guy.
We'll
Knowles is not the first guy they brought in to change everything. They brought in Alex Grinch out of Washington State back in 2018 as a co-defensive coordinator, and that didn't quite all work. And then he ended up going to Oklahoma, and Grinch didn't quite save the world there either. Now he's out with Lincoln Riley at USC. But just because you make a change and bring in a hired hot hand doesn't guarantee it's going to fix everything. So we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. But
and I thought, and lastly, because I got to jump, I thought the Oklahoma State guy that they brought in got a ton of mileage off the fact that Oklahoma State had a pretty good defense in the Pac-12 for Big 12 standards. But how many good quarterbacks were in the Big 12 last year?
Yeah, I don't know. And they ended up coming back and beating Notre Dame in the bowl game last year. They say the Big 12 defenses were better in the last couple of years, and they weren't as bad as all the cartoons.
They say that. But if you go back and you look at that league, the quarterback play last year in the Big 12 probably as bad as it's been in 15 years. Like, name one quarterback in the Big 12, you're like, you got a game plan. Normally they had guys that, they had 7, 8 guys that throwing for 4,000 yards. Yeah, I thought the quarterback play last year in the Big 12 was, okay. So, for Big 12 standards, that Oklahoma State defense was better. Baylor's defense was better. But they didn't play your typical really good pro style, quarterbacks that could sling it. So, I don't know. We'll see. I'm just not sold on it. I'm going to have to see them do it. Now,
we'll see if
I don't
Ohio
know
State,
who Notre Dame.
Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know who Notre Dame's going to roll out there.
Yeah.
That'll challenge them. But I'm not. They're going to. To me, they're going to beat people with their offense. I still don't see the defense, and mainly because I don't see the interior linemen that they, for all those pass rushers that they have, they usually were pretty firm up front, and those guys got pushed around a ton last year.
So we'll see if Ohio State can be everything that people expect them to be. Remains to be seen. Michigan has a cowardly schedule, which is an embarrassment to the entire Big Ten.
Jeez.
We won't know anything about them for several weeks. And their schedule's even worse next year. It's an embarrassment to the Big Ten. An embarrassment to the Big Ten. Cowardly. All right, so...
but listen, as long as they're rewarding folks for doing that, I don't know why more teams don't do it. There's
a groundswell narrative, especially from the South, that if Michigan happens to go 11-1 this year and gets into the college football playoff discussion, or even 12-0, there's a groundswell narrative that they should not make the playoff because of that schedule. It's starting now. And I don't know if Michigan will win enough games to get into that conversation, but they don't.
They have enough media. They have enough media mouthpieces to overcome that. They got enough people that have championed their cause. That the team that my head scratcher is people that are going all in on Penn State. I don't. That's a head scratcher to me.
Man, if they lose Thursday night,
that offensive line was a mess. That offensive line was a mess. The one football player that I thought, most teams every week didn't have an answer for is off to the NFL. Dotson. I wasn't sold on Clifford. I thought Dotson made him look a lot better. So, unless they fix that offensive line,
Oh yeah, it
I think it's just going to be more of the same. I mean, they always recruit good football players, but that offensive line was terrible. So unless they fix that old line, I don't know what to make of Penn State.
They seem
You
to
talked
often
about Maryland.
they seem to often have Penn State seems to often have like one glaring weakness. An offensive line. It's been that a couple of times in recent years, but it's like they often have. It might be like their running game, which has been non-existent here and there.
Right.
I mean, for them to just have like just a big hole in the team, man, and they just gave that dude a huge contract. I mean, that thing, if that gets sideways, that could get ugly too.
There's going to be some interesting, decisions being made about some of these coaches that I don't know. Franklin, I've always questioned his in-game ability. I mean, he's a heck of a recruiter. Clearly, he's selling something that kids keep signing up for it. But his in-game decisions are, there's always, my opinion of those guys, if you just stay in it, he's going to make a decision that's going to cost his kids the game.
But even as good of as a recruiter as he's been, he still comes away with a hole on the team somewhere. And they've had good recruiting classes.
You know what happens is he's not great at roster balance. Like, they'll have, 7 really good DBs, but terrible linebackers. Or, they might have one guard that can play winning football, and then the interior linemen are terrible. Like, yeah, it's great to have a top 5 class, man, but you got to have balance out your roster with, depth. It always seems like they're one injury away from whatever at a key position from like completely derailing that season. And it just then there's this belief. Like, when the last time you saw those kids really like lay it on the line for him?
Yeah.
That when I was at the game in November when it was snowing at Spartan Stadium. They competed, but did you really feel like they came there to win?
Nah.
No.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we'll give it our best, coach, but like, it didn't feel like they came there to win. Like, we're not losing this game.
Right.
And it's just something missing about that program, and there's a disconnect with Franklin and those guys. I don't know what it is. Like I said, they recruit their tails off. They keep getting kids, but you're right. There's always something missing. They're always missing a position. Like the running back situation they had there last year. I mean, how many of those guys could play at Michigan State?
Right. Yeah. So Penn
like
State.
Their starter is probably fourth string. So I mean, it's just we'll see.
Right.
Maryland. Look, and last thing I got to go. I've been extremely long-winded. Appreciate you for having me. Maryland always has guys that can beat you, but the problem with Maryland is they always have guys that can beat them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we talked about the Maryland last year when they were playing Penn State. It was, a one-score game. They throw a pick-six, game over. Yeah. Kind of similar situation. They're getting back in the game against us, throw a pick, game over. So they're going to be good enough always. They're going to have players that you got to go out there and beat them. If they stop beating themselves, it could be tough. We'll see. And lastly, with Mike Locksley, you talked about Locksley earlier. And I think the situation with this kid really just kind of changed the kind of guy he was. I think he, just values relationships and in life a little bit differently. And that, losing a child will do that to you. I'm speaking from experience. It'll do that to you. It completely changes how you view the world and how the importance of relationships.
Huh. All right. And their last time out, they won the Pinstripe Bowl. They blew out Virginia Tech, scored 54 points.
Yep.
Maryland can do that to
For
you.
sure.
They can
put up points, man. It's just that I think if I'm coaching Maryland, I try to take a little bit off of the quarterback's plate. I think there's too much on his plate, and I think he tries to do too much, and I think that leads to turnovers that end up costing them games. So if I'm them, I try to squeak in a running game or some screens just so he's not holding the ball so much. There's just so much on his plate that, I think he tries to do too much and ends up, leading to turnovers and costing them games. But, hey man, we are getting close to kickoff, and I'm gonna tap out. And,
All right.
hey, man, thanks for having me. Go green.
All right, man. Ron, Big Movie Armstrong, really glad that you called in to be a part of the show tonight. Appreciate everybody watching. Had a big audience tonight. People ramped up and amped up for Michigan State football, getting ready to kick off the season 2022. There goes Ron. Want to say thank you to everybody that joined in and posted questions. Hoping to get back to 3 and out. Kick off a 3 and out style, maybe on Sunday, something like that. Well, I'll be out of town Sunday. It's Labor Day this weekend, right? Labor Day weekend. It'll happen. Appreciate you guys hanging with me and hanging with us. And look out, hit the wrong button there, and being a part of SpartanMag.com and what we do. And we will see you over at SpartanMag.com. Make sure to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, go to SpartanMag.com. Consider becoming a subscriber over there too. We really appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Enjoy the weekend. Be safe. Stripe that stadium. Have a great Labor Day weekend. If you're in the state of Michigan, have a great Friday night. Safe travels going up north, wherever you're going. Safe travels all over the country. Spartan fans worldwide. Good, safe weekend. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time. Have a great weekend. Thanks for watching Spartan Mag Live.